A crowd of survivors watched this scene in horror, their hair standing on end, faces pale. This was not what they had imagined. The military had come to rescue them, but it also brought greater dangers and troubles. The chance of survival came hand in hand with increased peril, and panic ensued among everyone. However, this was normal. With global catastrophe looming and the apocalypse approaching, the military was stretched thin in the coastal city. Breaking the troops into smaller units was both a tactic and a necessity. It was unrealistic to expect the military's actions to be as safe and reassuring as ordinary survivors hoped, still operating within the city and searching for survivors. The military had done all they could. Of course, it was difficult for ordinary survivors to understand. Amid the flames and gunfire, chaos began to spread. At this moment, voices from the military personnel who had entered the building reached the survivors on the first floor. "We have survivors here. We found survivors. Count the numbers. Quickly count the numbers. Gather all survivors for evacuation. Cover fire, machine gunners, open fire. Let's eliminate these monsters." The chaotic voices mixed with gunfire. The flames flickered, and every face showed uncertainty. Su Xinghai, however, had no time for such thoughts and was busy pulling survivors to ask if there were any doctors. At this time, the people on the second floor were already in disarray. Although the military had arrived, their presence brought danger, and the survivors didn't know whether to feel fear or joy. No one paid attention to Su Xinghai. Suddenly, hurried footsteps were heard from below, and 3 or 4 bloodied soldiers rushed up to the second floor, saying, "How many of you are here? Everyone must get up and evacuate immediately. It's too dangerous here. We need to retreat right away, lighten your load, and prepare to run." The survivors stood up, a mass of people surging forward. In the midst of the chaos, whether they wanted to run or not, everyone was swept along, following the military to evacuate. Outside, mutated brown bears and giant mutant birds had begun to fight, their roars shaking the streets and causing everyone's hearts to tremble. At that moment, a figure emerged from the crowd, standing beside the soldier and shouting, "We have someone here with a high fever and unconscious. Do you have any military medics? Please, save him." This person was Su Xinghai, who had no time to think about anything else at that moment. Chapter 45. He.S. Beyond Saving. The situation in the royal city was dire, and the circumstances for the survivors in the hot pot restaurant took a sharp turn for the worse. At this moment, Su Xinghai had no choice but to seek help from the military. He had just asked around, and among the survivors in the room, there wasn't a single doctor. In the chaos, one young man claimed to have learned a bit about medicine from his father. He eagerly accepted a pile of supplies Su Xinghai handed him, but immediately revealed his lack of knowledge by suggesting that the severely feverish Wang Qing needed to take some banlangen, a traditional Chinese herbal remedy. Su Xinghai felt a surge of frustration towards the guy. In the midst of the chaos, the fraudulent survivor fled with the supplies while the monsters roared and flames flickered. The calm of the hot pot restaurant's second floor was completely filled with chaos and madness. At this moment, military personnel happened to rush in, leaving Su Xinghai no other option but to seek their assistance. If Wang Cheng were still conscious, he might consider himself unlucky. He had chosen to inject the serum because he felt safe and in control, and the current situation was something he never anticipated. However, this was the apocalypse. There was no place that was absolutely safe at any time. Wang Cheng had made the best judgment he could, and even if the circumstances were different, it was possible that he would face other dangers and dilemmas after injecting the special serum. This was not a misjudgment on Wang Cheng's part. In the crowd, 2 security personnel were closely guarding a girl in a short skirt, who was curiously peeking over to see what was happening with Su Xinghai and Wang Cheng. The soldiers frowned, with a few guiding other survivors to move quickly downstairs. The one who looked like an officer frowned as he listened to Su Xinghai say a couple of sentences, then said, "We all know first aid. Lead me to your companion first, quickly. Time is of the essence." At that moment, the hot pot restaurant shook violently, and debris fell from the ceiling. Su Xinghai glanced outside and saw the terrifying mutated brown bear collapsing, crashing into another building beside the hot pot restaurant. That structure crumbled like it was made of paper, causing their 3-story refuge to shake as well. Caught between 2 giant mutated birds, the 10-meter-tall mutated brown bear seemed to have no effective means to fight back, struggling and roaring in vain, unable to catch its flying opponents. The 2 giant birds were in a state of frenzied grief over their lost offspring, and the appearance of the mutated brown bear became an outlet for their rage. It wasn't just a matter of being attacked. Even being caught in the crossfire of these colossal creatures meant certain death for everyone inside the building, whether they were the daughters of prominent figures or seasoned warriors. They all faced the same fate, death. These 3 mutated beings were at least level 2 or higher. "Hurry, hurry," the soldier urged from behind. Su Xinghai's heart raced. He had heard Wang Cheng share intelligence obtained from Li Xinqing and understood what level 2 mutated beings meant, the threats they had faced before. Even the mutated giant dogs and the massive mutated blobs, only qualified as level 1 mutations. Level 2 mutations indicated a terrifying evolution far beyond the conventional biological state before the Earth's calamity. Such creatures were extremely dangerous. At that moment, the officer approached the prince, felt his forehead, and lifted his eyelids for a quick glance before shaking his head in disappointment. He turned to Zhang Chao and Su Xinghai and said, "Forget about him. With him in this state, there's no saving him." Meanwhile, most of the survivors on the second floor had nearly evacuated. The 2 security personnel were negotiating with the daughter of a prominent figure, lagging behind the others and unable to descend to the first floor. The young woman in the attractive short skirt kept glancing this way. Upon hearing the officer's words, Zhang Chao and Su Xinghai felt a heavy weight in their hearts. Zhang Chao instinctively exclaimed, "How is that possible? My second brother is in good shape. He just has a fever. How can he be beyond saving?" The officer replied, "With a fever like this, if you try to carry him, you will die too. Isn't that what beyond saving means? You have to leave him behind. He has a liability that will get you all killed." Outside, the scene was briefly illuminated by flames. A terrifying mutated giant bird, glowing red, was spewing fire, scorching a mutated brown bear. The leading officer's expression changed drastically. "It's a special variant. This is a level 3 mutated creature. There's no time for chatter. You need to prioritize your survival and come downstairs with me." Su Xinghai, however, reached out and firmly grasped the officer's arm, saying, "Brother, my friend here is likely awakening, which is why he has a fever. Please, think of a way. I know the situation is urgent, but we can carry him with us. You and the other soldiers just need to lead the other survivors ahead. We'll follow you. If we can retreat to a safe place together, please help us. Will you?" The officer looked surprised. "It's not that I don't want to save him. I would do my best to save anyone if I could. But with so many variants outside, it's already a struggle to save you all. To be blunt, we can't guarantee that many of us will survive. If we can save one, we will. In this situation, bringing him along is seeking death, even if he is awakening and could become a powerful individual in the future. If you all die, what is the point?" Su Xinghai understood the officer's reasoning. The chaos outside was overwhelming, and with the 3 giant monsters, more than half of the creatures on the streets were variants. In such a scenario, everyone was on edge, and even the military personnel had their limits. If there were truly no options, they wouldn't be so reluctant. Su Xinghai took a deep breath and said, "You don't need to worry about that. I'm also an awakened one. We will fight our way out with you." The officer gave Su Xinghai a deep look, wanting to ask who this feverish person really was to them. But he knew time was of the essence, and there was no time to waste. He simply nodded and said, "Then be careful. If you have the ability, I will do my best to take care of you. Follow me." At that moment, the wall on one side of the second floor suddenly exploded. A fiery line shot out from the mutated giant bird, piercing through the wall like a cannonball, sending debris flying. Su Xinghai picked up a tabletop to shield himself from the splattering debris, while Zhang Chao carried Wang Cheng on his back with all his strength. The 3 of them followed closely behind the officer, rushing downwards. The gunfire on the first floor sounded like popping beans. The front door of the hot pot restaurant was shattered by a monstrous force, and a large number of mutated creatures followed the army into the restaurant, engaging in a fierce battle. It had turned into chaos, with military personnel and mutated creatures everywhere. Some soldiers retreated to cover the survivors, but were surrounded by 3 or 4 mutated creatures, torn apart in a gruesome manner, blood splattering everywhere. In their last moments, they shouted, "Run! Run!" The soldiers fired in all directions, doing their utmost to protect the survivors as they retreated. They prepared to blow up the kitchen wall to create an escape route. A wave of survivors and soldiers descending the stairs got blocked in the corridor on the second floor. Mutated creatures climbed up from the sides and yanked a hapless survivor down the stairs. The 2 armed security guards and the soldiers fired together to hold back the onslaught. Many survivors on the second floor suffered casualties. One survivor, missing half of his body, screamed in despair, "You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have come here. You caused our deaths. You caused our deaths." Before the military arrived, they had been waiting here, hoping for rescue, but now they blamed the military for their plight. In his despair, he failed to realize that they were already trapped in a hot pot restaurant. Even if the military hadn't come, they had no way to leave. With no food and only waiting to die, the military could also choose not to come and not to save them. In that case, he wouldn't even have the chance he had now. If he wanted to blame someone, he could only blame himself for his lack of ability. Others seized opportunities to survive. He could not, and could only vent his anger in futile despair, revealing the darkest and most ignorant aspects of human nature. If it weren't for the soldiers, who would selflessly save you in such a time? Conversely, they might even kill or rob you. Su Xinghai witnessed this scene and, reflecting on the experiences of the past few days, deeply felt that the military could not be perfect. Even though the soldiers were desperately trying to save people, human ability has its limits. With so many survivors and so many monsters, there would inevitably be times and places they could not cover. To avoid despair, one cannot rely on others. Self-rescue and self-strengthening are the only paths. The officer glanced at him with a deep gaze, then withdrew his eyes with a sense of desolation, and shouted loudly, "Gather the survivors. Evacuate from the kitchen. Evacuate from the kitchen." The officer regrouped the formation, creating a line with other soldiers to protect the survivors as they retreated towards the kitchen area of the hot pot restaurant. Su Xinghai followed closely behind and nearly collided with someone. Turning his head, he found it was the girl. She glanced at the unconscious Wang Cheng, somewhat surprised, as if wanting to say something, but at that moment, mutated creatures came rushing in from the side. Su Xinghai had no time to talk with her. He raised his gun and sprayed bullets to help the military hold the breach. The officer was taken aback and turned around in surprise, saying, "You really are an awakened one. Impressive." In the midst of chaos, no one noticed that Wang Cheng, who was unconscious and slumped against Zhang Chao, suddenly had his eyelids twitch. The veins in his eyelids began to flow faster, presenting a scene of fiery crimson. It was as if he was about to wake up at any moment. Chapter 46. Can I breathe fire? The sky was dark and heavy. Thick smoke rose from the distant edge of the city, merging into the clouds above, causing the dark, heavy clouds to spread endlessly, making the city even darker. However, the long street of the hot pot restaurant was illuminated by flames. Gunfire erupted everywhere, as military soldiers covered a large number of survivors retreating to the kitchen area. There was a door here, but it had jammed, and the military had to urgently blow it open. The relatively narrow kitchen passage became a crucial defensive point at this moment, as numerous mutated creatures crowded outside trying to get in. The military set up firing points inside the kitchen, crazily shooting at the entrance to keep the mutated creatures at bay. The survivors inside were terrified, their faces pale and huddled together, trembling in fear amidst the deafening gunfire. A thunderous noise, akin to an earthquake, came from not far ahead, accompanied by the howls of three giant monsters still battling, as if fighting for dominance in the area. Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao were also retreating. Zhang Chao had been carrying Wang Cheng all the way. Even though he was physically capable, he was now sweating profusely and his face was pale. Many surrounding survivors looked at him as if he were a fool, but Zhang Chao still refused to put Wang Cheng down, gripping his pistol tightly, vigilantly scanning the front. What he didn't notice was that Wang Cheng's eye movements became more intense, clearly on the verge of awakening. At the same time, a loud explosion sounded from behind them. The wall behind them was successfully blown open by the military, and the jammed metal kitchen door flew off like a shield, crashing down onto the ground behind them. A large chunk of the surrounding wall was blown apart, debris flying everywhere. And outside there were several mutated creatures swaying and rushing this way. Fortunately, the military soldiers were well prepared, shooting the heads of the few mutated creatures and taking them down. One soldier rushed out first to survey the surroundings. The small road outside the kitchen door was relatively safe compared to the monster-filled street ahead, making it a much better option for retreating and hiding. He quickly climbed onto a dirt mound and shouted, "Hurry! Everyone follow me, we'll evacuate through this road." A group of survivors rushed out in a flurry, while the officer at the back coordinated with the soldiers to fend off the pursuing mutated creatures while also retreating. However, a terrifying explosion resounded. The soldier on the dirt mound's shout abruptly ceased. A giant hand descended from the sky, crushing him and the mound beneath him. A living person was directly smashed into the palm of a hand covered in black and red fur, merging almost seamlessly with the mound below. Blood flowed everywhere, and the surrounding survivors screamed in terror, stumbling backward, some falling to the ground. The momentum of their escape was instantly halted. A massive shadow loomed overhead, accompanied by a deafening, terrifying roar. The mutated brown bear, with its enormous body, was crushing one side of a building, roaring and sweeping a tremendous amount of debris along with it. It had spotted the humans trying to flee. High above, two mutated giant birds screeched as they ascended, creating some distance from the mutated brown bear. An officer also rushed out, his face changing color. In the midst of the chaos, the mutated brown bear raised a foot high, crashing down like the collapse of heaven and earth. Blood splattered everywhere. Whoever was trampled instantly turned into a puddle of flesh and blood. Shadows swayed, chaos reigned, gunfire erupted, survivors and mutated beings mingled in the turmoil. And in the darkness and flames, everything fell into complete disorder. "Run! Run!" Su Xinghai shouted. He reached out, wanting to pull Zhang Chao to flee in another direction. But after running 7 or 8 meters, he realized something was wrong. Turning his head, he found he had grabbed the wrong person, a stranger he had never seen before. In the chaotic crowd, Zhang Chao was also knocked down by someone, struggling to get up, just in time to see Wang Cheng's body roll to one side, nearly under the giant mutated bear's foot. Zhang Chao's heart raced, and he struggled to rush forward. However, a roar came from above. The mutated brown bear raised its foot high, preparing to stomp down, its massive paw overshadowing the area, with Wang Cheng right in the center. Watch out. The officer lunged from the side, grabbing Zhang Chao's body and rolling away. Turning his head, he was also horrified. Several people were covered under that enormous paw, including the girl with a special identity, who was beneath it, along with the security personnel, the awakened one who had previously shown off to Wang Cheng and others, now futilely trying to shoot at the immense paw, his expression terrified. His face flushed, clearly pushed to the brink of fear. Strangely, the girl remained remarkably calm, even oddly pushing her hands against the paw, making an action that seemed both incredible and useless. Unfortunately, at that moment, few noticed her, as Zhang Chao desperately tried to rush in but was firmly held back by the officer. Run, run. He can't be saved, they can't be saved. One death is better than two. Just get the hell out of here. Zhang Chao was severely exhausted, unable to break free, and could only watch helplessly as the enormous paw slowly descended, looming over Wang Cheng. Death seemed to be just around the corner. However, at that moment, a flash of fire suddenly erupted from the shadow, shooting up like a meteor, striking the gigantic paw of the mutated brown bear, causing it to emit a piercing howl as if its foot had been burned. Reflexively, it leaped back, losing its balance and crashing down on the nearby hot pot restaurant, creating a tremendous noise and causing half of the restaurant to collapse, sending up clouds of dust. The officer showed a look of surprise. Who is it? Wang Cheng is awake. Wang Cheng is awake. Zhang Chao broke free from the officer's grip and stumbled forward, but at that moment, the shockwave from the collapsing building and the swirling dust rushed in, instantly sweeping him off his feet and engulfing him. Amidst the billowing dust, Wang Cheng slowly stood up. Behind him, the girl and the security personnel looked on in shock, not expecting Wang Cheng, who had been unconscious, to suddenly appear and strike with such force. Wang Cheng was also surprised, looking down at his own hands. They were red and felt hot all over, as if a surge of heat was flowing through him, threatening to either burst forth or consume him entirely. Moreover, Wang Cheng felt confused. What was happening? Everything had been fine just moments ago, and now it had turned into this chaos. In the midst of confusion, he couldn't find his two companions, but he did see the girl and the awakened security personnel staring at him as if he were a monster. Before he could think further, a deafening roar erupted right in front of him. The dust trembled as a terrifying mutated brown bear lunged from the shadows, seemingly enraged by the previous attack, howling repeatedly. In the chaos, it couldn't see clearly, but it swiped down with its enormous paw, aiming to crush him. Wang Cheng caught the blow. Yes, he caught it. This massive paw could have easily turned a living person into mush with its terrifying strength. However, at that moment, Wang Cheng extended both hands and, with his human body, managed to withstand the force of that monstrous claw. Of course, his veins bulged, his face contorted, and the veins on his hands burst from the strain, forcing his body to stagger backward. This was the effect of the strength-type special serum. But Wang Cheng had only injected the lowest level of the strength serum. He was barely holding on, and it was clear he was losing ground, about to be thrown away and crushed. Yet at that moment, a burst of fire erupted from his palms, the scorching flames creating an explosive effect that not only burned him, but also seared the mutated brown bear's paw. Almost instantaneously, it ignited its palm, the terrifying high temperature burning through its skin. It howled in pain, suddenly raising its massive body, and its paw retreated as the flames spread with a fierce wind, transforming it into a colossal roasted bear paw. Wang Cheng stumbled backward, feeling a fiery sting in his hands, but he clearly saw that just moments ago, he had indeed breathed fire. What the hell? I can breathe fire now. Turning his head, he saw the awakened security personnel staring at him in disbelief, seemingly forgetting the danger they were in, exclaiming in shock, "You're also an awakened one? Wait, no, with that kind of power, did you just awaken to level 2? You're a level 2 awakened." His face felt hot, and he recalled how he had tried to intimidate the other party with his identity as an awakened one. Now, the opponent was supposedly a level 2 awakened being, a level that no one could reach at the moment. In comparison, his previous actions seemed foolish and laughable. The girl seemed to know what a level 2 awakened being was, and she stared at Wang Cheng with wide eyes, as if looking at some exotic animal. Chapter 47. I want to fight back. A level 2 awakened being? Hearing this, Wang Cheng was momentarily stunned. He had been somewhat dazed. He did not expect this serum to have such severe side effects, nor did he anticipate that they would encounter such a huge problem while hiding so well. But this was the existence of an information gap. Unless one had a god's perspective, no one could foresee the future. However, Wang Cheng had a good understanding of his own capabilities regarding what these two had said. He was very clear that he was definitely not a level 2 awakened being. That series of attacks he had just unleashed looked fierce, capable of withstanding the furious strike of a mutated brown bear over 10 meters tall. But he knew that it was not because he was a powerful awakened being. it was due to the combination of his 3 special serums. It could be said that while other awakened beings excelled in one specialized direction, Wang Cheng now possessed 3 special abilities, equivalent to 3 level 1 awakened beings, which naturally made him stand out. At this moment, Wang Cheng was unsure whether to feel happy or not. The abilities of this unknown type of special serum were similar to what he had guessed. They were indeed extraordinary powers. However, his ability was quite different from Chunlan's. Chunlan's power was a pure fireball, while Wang Cheng's ability to ignite his hands had an explosive feel, more akin to those 2 mutated giant birds, with a higher temperature. After just one use, Wang Cheng's hands were already covered in blood, feeling weak and nearly powerless. Moreover, the usage of this ability seemed very limited. After just 2 uses, Wang Cheng clearly felt an overwhelming fatigue. The burning sensation within him had vanished, as if the energy had been depleted, leaving him with a feeling akin to being drained. As far as he knew, individuals like Su Xinghai and Chunlan could use their abilities dozens of times in a day. However, he was too lazy to waste words explaining this to the two. After assessing his own situation, he immediately raised his head to observe the mutated brown bear. The bear was retreating step by step, howling continuously, its massive paws slamming on the ground in a frantic attempt to extinguish the flames. While it was under a combined attack from the military and the 2 mutated giant birds. Seeing those 2 mutated giant birds made Wang Cheng's mouth twitch slightly. Nonetheless, he also heard a system prompt in his ear. Dear host, special mutated entity detected. Hunting it can yield special serum and 50 energy points. This was clearly referring to the mutated brown bear, but what surprised Wang Cheng was that despite the bear's 10-meter height, it was worth fewer energy points than the much smaller mutated giant birds. Could it be because it couldn't breathe fire? Wang Cheng noticed that although the mutated brown bear was large in size, it didn't seem to possess any extraordinary abilities. It had just been pushed back by Wang Cheng's strike and was now being attacked by military soldiers and a mutated giant bird, leaving it battered and bruised. Especially when the giant bird breathed fire at it, the bear could only block with its arms, screaming in pain as it rolled in the smoke to extinguish the flames. The 3 giant creatures were engaged in fierce combat, and the desperate situation had somewhat eased. However, the surrounding chaos remained. Wang Cheng had temporarily repelled the bear's frenzied attacks, buying some time for everyone, but the panic among the survivors was overwhelming, causing them to run blindly and create significant trouble for the military. The smoke and flames obscured visibility, making it hard to distinguish who was who. Sometimes, even when a mutated creature was right in front of them, it was only then they could barely recognize it. At that moment, Zhang Chao, who had been nearby, pushed through the smoke and ran back with an officer. The officer was astonished and looked at Wang Cheng, asking, "Was that you just now? You?" He could hardly believe that the person he had deemed hopeless due to a high fever and deep coma had turned around and repelled the mutated bear. Zhang Chao, more concerned about Wang Cheng's injuries, said, "That's great. I knew you'd be fine. Your hand looks terrible. We need to get out of here. We don't know where the boss got scattered off to. We have to find him and retreat together." Wang Cheng's injuries looked severe, but he knew they were just ruptured capillaries causing significant bleeding, which was nothing compared to the dangers of this era. He was about to say something when he was slightly startled. Turning his head, he saw the girl had somehow approached and was holding his bloody injured arm. The spot where she gripped felt cold, but somewhat comforting. In this apocalyptic world, after struggling for so long, Wang Cheng had become extremely vigilant and hadn't even noticed how she had gotten there. The girl raised her innocent face, her expression unusually serious. "Are you really a level 2 awakened? How did you achieve level 2? Do you know? Right now, all awakened are stuck at level 1 because no one knows the path to level 2. This girl seemed to be more than just the daughter of a powerful family. She was quite remarkable. However, Wang Cheng didn't have time for idle chatter. His natural resentment towards the rich surfaced, and he shook his head, saying, "I'm not a level 2 awakened. You're overthinking it. Zhang Chao, you stay with these soldiers. I need to go back. My vehicle is still up ahead." That warship was his most important possession and couldn't be left behind. Moreover, as Wang Cheng watched the 3 giant mutated creatures fighting, an astonishing plan formed in his mind. Each of these creatures was worth at least 50 energy points or more. If he could take advantage of their battle and manage to kill them, not only could he eliminate future threats, but also gain a significant amount of energy points. Zhang Chao immediately said, "I'll go with you." Wang Cheng shook his head and said, "You go find the boss and stay with the military. I will join you. Trust me, if you keep talking, there won't be enough time." As he spoke, Wang Cheng's gaze turned to the officer and asked, "Can you give me 2 grenades?" The officer was taken aback. Until this day, he had never encountered someone so insane. Previously, he had been both surprised and impressed by Zhang Chao and Su Xinghai's determination to not give up on Wang Cheng. That kind of behavior was at least understandable. But now, Wang Cheng's actions were beyond his comprehension. In such a situation, when there was finally a chance to escape, why would one go back for a vehicle or try to fight their way back? Wasn't that madness? Was a vehicle more important than a life? Going back now would be like seeking death. It seemed Wang Chung sensed his thoughts and quickly said, I know what I'm saying is hard to understand. But those monsters are just around the corner, and there are swarms of mutated creatures behind us. We don't have time. Give me 2 grenades. And I will help you attract the mutated creatures and the giant monsters. This will only benefit all of you, and my brothers will stick with you. You can rest assured, I will do my utmost. The officer was increasingly dumbfounded, and the awakened security personnel beside him looked on in shock. He suddenly realized how foolish and ridiculous it was to showcase strength against this man earlier. These people were simply insane, yet behind their madness was a chilling confidence. The officer took a deep look at Wang Chung and could see that this man was not joking, not boasting, and certainly not mad. There seemed to be a deeper purpose behind what appeared to be a crazy act. But as Wang Chung said, the situation was urgent and chaotic. If he could go back and attract the attention of the mutated creatures, it would undoubtedly be a huge help to them. After 2 seconds of silence, the officer unfastened 3 tactical grenades from his waist and handed them to Wang Chung, saying, There's a grain store 2 streets ahead. If all goes well, we will wait for you there until dawn. In recent days, he had seen all kinds of people while rescuing survivors, some terrified, some chaotic and malicious, and even some self-reliant and strong. But he had never seen a survivor who remained so calm and made plans in such a situation. He felt Wang Chung was a talent and considered trying to recruit him since the military was in need of capable people. Wang Chung nodded and turned toward the dilapidated hot pot restaurant behind him. Zhang Chao gritted his teeth, chose to listen to Wang Chung, and followed the officer to meet up with Su Xinghai to gather survivors and retreat in an orderly manner. To Wang Cheng's surprise, the girl also followed him, her short skirt fluttering as she closely trailed behind. As Wang Chung moved quickly, he couldn't help but pause slightly and frowned, asking, What are you doing? Why are you following me? The girl bit her lip and replied, You are a level 2 awakened one, incredibly precious. I can't let anything happen to you. Wang Chung was speechless. He wanted to say, with a young lady like you following me, who is more likely to get into trouble? Don't you have any idea? He had never thought much of the girl, and at this moment, he merely frowned and coldly said, If you want to follow me, think carefully. If something happens to you, I won't have the time to take care of you. Life and death are fated. You should accept your lot. The girl raised her fair face, her pure features revealing a firm determination. I understand. Don't worry, I won't be a burden to you. Chapter 48. The power of upgraded grenades. Wang Chung felt somewhat annoyed. Why was this girl so insistent on following him? Clearly, there were others providing protection, and they were nearing a safe state, yet she insisted on trailing behind him like a little tail. As Wang Chung moved through the ruins, he raised his gun and shot down a mutated creature. Under the fierce firepower of his shotgun, the creature's head exploded, blood spraying out in a fan shape as it collapsed to the ground. Wang Chung glanced back. The girl was closely following him, surprisingly agile as she navigated the debris. His impression of her was not very good, and at this moment, he found her behavior baffling. He had stated that they should accept their fates, so he wouldn't actively look after her. He himself was in danger, so how could he find the time to worry about someone else? After passing through the half-collapsed hot pot restaurant's ruins, Wang Chung narrowly avoided being hit by a falling beam. Fortunately, his quick reflexes and the strength gained from an injected serum allowed him to push the beam aside, or he would have been in serious trouble. Once he returned to the street in front of the hot pot restaurant, he noticed that the area had completely changed. The ground was shattered. The once clean asphalt road and brick sidewalks were completely destroyed, with cracks in the earth and rubble everywhere. Flames flowed across the ground as if alive, igniting abandoned vehicles and the remnants of buildings on the street. Some mutated creatures were also set ablaze, running wildly like torches, howling continuously, until they were crushed underfoot with a loud thud. 3 giant creatures were battling fiercely in the area, and Wang Chung quickly moved forward, immediately spotting his small warship parked by the roadside. His Wuling ship was compact and had strong impact resistance. Although it was covered in debris, it was mostly unharmed. Wang Chung advanced toward it, holding a grenade in one hand, slowly infusing energy points to upgrade the grenade. Earlier, in the dormitory building, he had upgraded a toy grenade to a standard high-explosive grenade, reaching level 1. Now, he held a real grenade in his hand, and the next upgrade would elevate it to level 2. Upgrading from a toy grenade to a real grenade required 5 energy points, while further upgrading a real grenade required 10 energy points, doubling the requirement. Wang Cheng's gaze flickered as the grenade in his palm slowly transformed. He rushed to his Wuling, opened the door, and sat down inside. However, the girl behind him did not follow because just as she attempted to catch up, a mutated brown bear was knocked down by 2 giant birds, crashing to the ground and cutting off her path back to Wang Chung. She stood amidst the ruins, her slender figure swaying under the flickering flames. She looked to be about the same age as the capital, captivating and delicate, creating a poignant scene against the grim surroundings of the apocalypse. Meanwhile, a mutated brown bear was raising its paw, ready to smash down on the warship of the capital. As it fell, it also noticed the nearby human ants. This once arrogant and invincible mutated bear was now covered in wounds, with scorch marks all over its body. Large patches of its dark red fur singed away, and blood flowing profusely. Yet, as a mutated creature, it still possessed formidable survival and combat abilities, and its massive paw swung towards the people and vehicles of the capital. However, the situation was different now. The capital's people and vehicles were united as one. At the moment he got into the vehicle, he noticed the attack from the mutated bear and immediately slammed the accelerator, wildly engaging the nitrous boost. At the same time, 10 energy points were consumed, and the high-explosive grenade was upgraded. The capital charged forward, unerringly crashing into the fallen mutated bear's gaping maw. This scene looked as if the capital was about to execute a slide tackle, willingly throwing itself into the mouth of the giant beast. The 10-meter-tall mutated bear had a massive mouth capable of swallowing both the vehicle and its occupant. It let out an excited howl, its eyes glowing bright red, leaning forward to eagerly present its mouth, ready to devour the capital. The girl nearby screamed, thinking the capital was doomed. The capital thought she was crazy, and she thought he was insane for taking such a huge risk to return to the battlefield of the giant beast, only to deliver himself to his doom. But unfortunately, the next second, it was the mutated bear's head that exploded. The capital had thrown a level 2 high-explosive grenade, hitting it with precision. In the next moment, a brilliant light erupted from the bear's head, the explosion tearing it apart, blood and gore raining down, nearly engulfing the capital's vehicle in a shower of crimson. This was not just a gunpowder explosion. It even had the explosive power of a laser bomb, a beam erupting from it, cutting in a 360-degree arc before suddenly extinguishing, followed by the force of high explosives that shredded the bear's already severed massive head. Blood splattered everywhere, and its enormous body crashed down. The girl in the distance hid behind a broken concrete slab, hardly believing her eyes. The capital was also surprised. The mutated bear, tough and resilient. How powerful could a normal grenade be? The capital knew well that it was difficult for a single grenade to blow off its entire head, yet now, a level 2 grenade had such astonishing power that it shattered the bear's head. However, at that moment, the capital's vehicle was moving too fast and collided with the bear, coming to a sudden halt. 50 energy points were credited, and the capital suppressed his excitement, quickly opening the car door and jumping out to reach for the giant beast's body. Extract the serum. This mutated brown bear not only provided 50 energy points, but also a special serum. Wang Cheng, who had already injected 3 special serums, fully understood the benefits of these serums. At this moment, he could not let this opportunity slip away, even though the surrounding environment was extremely dangerous. He had to seize every second to obtain the special serum from the mutated brown bear. Just then, a terrifying screech echoed from above. Wang Cheng felt a chill run down his spine as he saw that. With the death of the mutated brown bear, the 2 mutated giant birds had also spotted him. When enemies meet, their eyes turn red. They swoop down from above, ready to attack. Hurry, system, accelerate. Wang Cheng's heart raced with anxiety. At that moment, a sound came from the side. A stone struck one of the mutated giant birds, briefly diverting their attention. Wang Cheng looked over and saw a girl standing up from the rubble, trembling all over. It was she who had thrown the stone, trying to help Wang Cheng attract the attention of the mutated giants. Wang Cheng was taken aback and gave the girl a deep glance. At that moment, he began to believe that her words were sincere. However, her attempt was in vain. The 2 mutated giant birds clearly recognized Wang Cheng and ignored her, focusing solely on their enemy. Wang Cheng was stunned. These mutated creatures could actually remember who their enemy was. Even after nearly a day, they were still so eager for revenge. Their bodies began to glow red, and their massive mouths opened wide in the sky, flames ready to erupt. Wang Cheng was right below them. If he was hit, he would instantly become a dancing fireball. But the girl had bought Wang Cheng a little time. That little time was incredibly precious. The special serum had been extracted. To Wang Cheng's delight, this vial of special serum was a power type. The mutated brown bear had not died in vain. The risk he took had not been for nothing, although he was not a level 2 awakened one. Injecting a level 2 power serum could change that. At this moment, Wang Cheng was only briefly surprised before quickly turning to get into the vehicle, urgently shutting the door, sealing the warship, and accelerating madly. The flames chased behind him. Terrifying tongues of fire licked the vehicle, and the explosive blasts spread along the body of the vehicle. In an instant, half of the vehicle was engulfed in flames. Amidst the firelight, Wang Cheng burst out and ran for his life. Inside the warship, alarms blared continuously, and the external armor suffered heavy hits. Wang Cheng glanced at the situation. It had reached a point where warnings were unnecessary. The temperature inside the cabin kept rising, and he could even see flames erupting from the back of the vehicle, racing through the darkness with a surreal, eye-catching spectacle. However, the two mutated giant birds continued to pursue relentlessly. Wang Qing's heart raced with fear, and he thought fiercely, "One day, I'll bring both of you down." With lofty ambitions in his heart, at that moment, Wang Qing was not a match for the two giant birds. If he forced a confrontation, he could be burned along with the warship, turning into a roasted duck in an iron furnace. At this moment, he could only fly for his life. Chapter 49, Who Dares to Move Her? These two mutated giant birds, according to the rating standard mentioned by Li Xinqing, are at least level 2, if not level 3. They are definitely not ordinary mutated creatures. A mutated brown bear is worth 50 energy points, while each of these mutated giant birds is valued at 55 energy points, which shows that they are indeed extraordinary. Wang Qing thought to himself that he would eventually capture these two giant birds, extract their serum, and later give a vial to Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao, making them pay for chasing him so fiercely. Wang Qing was filled with rage as he was pursued by the two mutated giant birds. However, at this moment, he was no match for them and was desperately fleeing for his life, running as fast as if his rear was on fire. Gunfire erupted as he shot down countless mutated beings along the way, carving out a bloody path. On both sides of the street, many survivors hiding in their rooms heard the sounds and peeked out, witnessing a scene they would never forget. On the dilapidated street, under the dark night, a Wuling vehicle, its rear on fire, roared down the street at high speed, even faster than a sports car, with two terrifying fire-breathing giant birds relentlessly pursuing it. It was like a thrilling chase scene straight out of an action blockbuster. But for Wang Qing, it felt like madness. The damage to the warship's alarm had escalated from a few percent at the beginning to now nearly 30%. The outer armor was severely burned, and the nitrogen and energy were running low. If this continued, he would have to painfully watch his hard-earned energy points go up in flames. Fortunately, Wang Qing took several detours, finally extinguished the fire on the vehicle, and found a place to settle down, successfully evading the pursuit of the mutated giant birds. Hiding in a garage of a residential area, Wang Qing peeked out and saw that the two mutated giant birds had lost their target and were circling in the sky before flying off into the distance. He had finally shaken them off. Wang Qing took a deep breath, feeling a wave of deep fatigue wash over him. After being chased, his nerves were on edge, and he dared not relax for a moment. He had run fast enough and reacted quickly. Just moments ago, it had felt like his rear was on fire. Had he reacted even a moment slower, he might have already been blown to bits by those two mutated giant birds. Moreover, the aftereffects of the serum he had just injected were still present. After using his fire abilities, he felt completely drained. At that moment, multiple symptoms surged up, and he nearly collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath, utterly exhausted. But soon, a smile appeared at the corner of Wang Qing's mouth. This adventure had been worth it. This crazy night had brought him close to death, but he had gained a lot. The level 2 special power serum was one thing. Wang Qing felt that after injecting it, he would at least reach the level of a level 2 awakened being, as described by Li Xinqing and that influential figures girl, a level that no one had reached so far. Additionally, his energy points had reached an unprecedented height, a total of 253 energy points. Among them, some were obtained by killing mutated brown bears, while others were earned from the mutant creatures encountered along the way, either by running them over or shooting them. As a result, Wang Qing had nearly exhausted the rifle bullets. The bullets he had requested from Li Xinqing were all used up, leaving only some toy bullets that had not yet been upgraded. At this moment, he only had 3 rounds left for the mounted machine gun. What was troubling Wang Qing even more was the issue of the battleship's energy and damage system. How many energy points are needed to repair the current damage to the battleship? Scanning battleship, modeling in progress, data calculation ongoing. To repair the currently damaged modules, an estimated energy cost of 43 points is required. Seeing this number made Wang Qing's mouth twitch. 43 energy points. Wasn't this just robbing energy points? Now, he was finally close to the 300 energy points needed to upgrade to a level 2 battleship, just under 50 points away. If he spent 43 energy points on repairs, he would be nearly 100 points short again. After much hesitation, Wang Qing decided not to repair it. Although his current Wuling battleship looked shabby with a damage rate of 30% and significantly reduced defense, its main functions were basically intact and still usable. Moreover, once upgraded from level 2 to level 3, the battleship would automatically repair itself, saving him those 43 energy points. After contemplating, Wang Qing decided to hold off on repairs. It was better to save energy points for upgrading the battleship rather than wasting them on repairs. In addition, there was the trouble of energy. The battleship required special energy to start. Conventional electricity, fossil fuels, and even Wang Qing's energy points could be converted into the energy needed for the battleship. but the efficiency varied based on the type. After a night of fleeing, the already limited battleship energy was rapidly depleted, and the energy display showed only a shallow layer remaining. However, Wang Chung was reluctant to part with his energy points. He spread out a map, targeting a gas station near the Ping Song market, preparing to head back and acquire some fossil energy. Energy points were the hardest to obtain and accumulate. Compared to using them to refill energy and repair the battleship, Wang Chung preferred to use other resources, saving energy points for upgrading items and the battleship. This would maximize the utility of the energy points. After a brief rest, Wang Chung chugged a can of energy drink and slowly stood up, getting back into the vehicle and gradually driving out of the garage. The two mutated giant birds had lost their target nearby and were still lingering in the area. Wang Chung chose a position relatively far from them and quietly drove out, advancing silently and leaving them far behind. At this moment, Wang Chung finally let out a sigh of relief. He thought to himself, I will come back. His destination was the rendezvous point agreed upon with the officers. He needed to meet up with Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao. However, the time has stretched a bit longer, exceeding the previously agreed 2 hours. It's uncertain whether they are still waiting. The city has activated low-power silent mode, moving quietly through the night. It's already past 4 in the morning, and the sky is beginning to brighten. A new day is about to dawn. With no major incidents along the way, the city effortlessly took down a few isolated mutated creatures and finally arrived at the rendezvous point. However, the situation here is not optimistic. The agreed location, a grain store, is in disarray with clear signs of gunfire. There are numerous monster corpses on the ground, as well as human remains. The city jumped out of the vehicle and moved inward, discovering that a fierce battle had erupted here. However, he breathed a sigh of relief upon not seeing the officer or perhaps the bodies of Xinghai and Zhang Chao. They are still alive. They might have been forced to relocate due to a monster attack. After all, this is not the time before the apocalypse. Even if someone says they will wait for you, the conditions may not allow it. At this moment, the city's ears perked up slightly as he heard sounds coming from the second floor. He frowned, gripping his shotgun tightly, and cautiously ascended the stairs. He then heard a series of lewd voices. With the gunfire, no military personnel have been found, but look at what we have here, a little girl. Quite the catch. She might even be a virgin. Whoever comes first, I want to be the first to take a shot. Stealthily making his way to the second floor, he saw a group of men surrounding a girl, closing in on her. The city narrowed his eyes. He recognized these men. They were part of the motorcycle gang he had dealt with earlier, and the girl was none other than the daughter of a significant figure. It seems they heard the gunfire, didn't he find the military, and ended up here by chance. The men were preparing to do something unspeakable to the girl, who was cornered against the wall, eyes downcast, trembling in fear, but no one noticed the fierce look flashing in her eyes. Just then, a cold voice, almost ghostly, rang out behind them. I dare anyone to touch her. A gunshot rang out, and one of the men at the back was shot dead, blood splattering 5 steps away. The others turned pale, trembling in fear. Is that you? The madman who installed a machine gun in that vehicle? On the second floor of the grain store, everyone turned their heads, their faces draining of color. They had recently clashed with the city, and given that he had killed their leader, he left a deep impression on them. In their eyes, the city was like a devil or a god of death. Although they had the numerical advantage, having just witnessed one of their own shot in the head, they showed no intention of resisting. Seeing the city's face, they panicked and scattered, desperate to escape from this person before them. The girl looked at the scene in surprise, not expecting that the rowdy thugs who had just been so arrogant in front of her would now appear before the city like students caught by a teacher, filled with fear and panic. Unfortunately, the city would not give them another chance. Last time, they had escaped quickly, and with their leader killed, the city was reluctant to waste resources pursuing them. This time, having caught up, they naturally aimed to eradicate them completely, firing shotgun after shotgun, taking them down one by one. The process went very smoothly. These people had lost their fighting spirit and only knew to flee, facing certain death. Once the second floor was completely quiet, the city glanced at the corner where the girl looked bewildered and awkwardly asked, "You're still alive?" The city was genuinely surprised. Given the chaotic situation at that time, with 3 giant monsters and so many mutated beings in the ruins, how did this girl, all alone, not only survive, but make it here? She must have been incredibly lucky. The girl's chest rose and fell slightly, and her fair face had a bit of dirt on it, which made her appear even cuter and more playful. She looked up at the city and asked, seemingly out of context, "You're really not from the military?" She was astonished. The city handled the gun well, and she had already deduced that he was a secondary awakener. Considering all this information, it was hard for her to believe that the city was just a survivor without formal training. The city shook his head. "This place isn't safe to stay for long. If you have nowhere to go, I can take you part of the way, but you need to find someone from the military to go with them. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you." Initially, the city didn't think much of this girl who seemed to be around his age, but seeing how she had risked her life to help him in the ruins, he was surprised and began to change his perspective. In such times, it was difficult for a girl like her to survive alone. So he decided to lend her a hand. The girl stared at the city in a daze, seemingly taken aback, and after a moment, she nodded. "My name is Su Ling, thank you." "I'm Wang Cheng," the city replied, nodding. "You don't need to thank me. You helped me, and I'm helping you in return. That's only fair." Saying this, the city turned to rummage through the grain shop. The shop was in disarray, filled with corpses and bloodstains, with almost all useful supplies already looted. After searching for a while, he found some scattered rice in a corner, filling a bag with about a pound or so. In the days before the apocalypse, that would have been just a bowl of rice, but now it was quite valuable. Although the city had plenty of supplies in his vehicle, he never passed up the opportunity to gather more. There would always come a time when resources ran out. Su Ling followed closely behind, having shown bravery and determination when she was chasing after him, but now she seemed helpless. Clearly unfamiliar with the dirty and hard work of scavenging for supplies in this post-apocalyptic world, she had always been surrounded by loyal security personnel, and it was evident that this kind of work was not something a young lady like her would typically do. The city glanced at her and asked, "Are you a student too?" Su Ling nodded. "I'm in my third year at Haiqing No. 1 High School, and the college entrance examination is just a few days away." Pu Wangqing stood up. "Aren't you an adult yet?" He looked Su Ling up and down, considering that for someone who wasn't an adult, she had developed quite well. "I started school late, but I'm already 18, Su Ling replied. Wangqing nodded. "When I was in my third year, I also thought that if the world were to end, I wouldn't have to suffer through studying and the entrance exam. But only when that day actually comes do I realize that compared to such a terrifying world, studying and the exam are really quite easy." After preparing the supplies, Wangqing took the lead and walked towards the battleship parked outside. Su Ling followed closely behind. "Are you a second-level awakener?" "I'm not," Wangqing answered clearly and succinctly. "I don't even know how to become a second-level awakener, so please don't ask anymore." In fact, Wangqing did have a vial of special serum for second-level awakening, and he believed that injecting it would elevate his power to that level. However, having learned from his experience with the mutated bird, he understood that even if there weren't significant side effects, it could still lead to high fever and unconsciousness. He didn't want to go through that again and needed to inject it in a completely safe place. But Su Ling, closely following him, said, "You were able to burn that terrifying second-level mutated brown bear, and you have that kind of strength and superpower. How could you not be a second-level awakener? Do you know how precious second-level awakeners are? It's said that there isn't a single second-level awakener in the entire Haiqing. If someone can reach that level and provide valuable breakthrough or mutation data, it would give official scientists a direction for research, potentially leading to a universal method that could greatly increase the chances of all first-level awakeners becoming second-level." Su Ling was very focused on second-level awakeners and had an impressive perspective on the bigger picture. Wangqing didn't know how to explain it. He wasn't that familiar with Su Ling, so he simply kept silent. He knew his own situation. Even if he injected the second-level serum and gained the strength of a second-level awakener, he was still different from others because he hadn't truly awakened. His power came entirely from the genetic enhancement of the serum, making him akin to a modified soldier, which was quite different from someone like a natural-born deity. As they moved forward, Su Ling noticed Wangqing's somewhat damaged woolen car and was taken aback, pointing to a relatively intact abandoned SUV on the side of the street. "Isn't that the car you had before? It looks like this now. Why are you still driving it? Why don't we switch to that car?" Su Ling wasn't a bad person, but she clearly belonged to the type that struggled to communicate with others. Wangqing opened the door and got in. "You can drive that car." Su Ling had no choice but to follow him reluctantly. She wanted to stay with Wangqing. Wangqing started the battleship and glanced at the dwindling energy levels, feeling a bit worried. "What should we do now?" Wangqing Dao said. "First, let's look for traces around. If we can find my brothers, we can join up with the military, and you can meet directly with your 2 bodyguards. If not, we'll head to the nearest gas station in Pingsong to refuel." Su Ling nodded, and suddenly her gaze shifted as she saw something. With surprise, she exclaimed, "You have so many supplies in your car? Oh my, there's even cola. Can you give me a can of fruit?" She displayed a gluttonous expression like a little girl, charming and quite cute. Wangqing glanced at her, unimpressed by her antics. With a straight face, he replied, "No, you're not my companion. I'm just giving you a ride. My things are mine." Su Ling seemed to really love food. Even after being turned down by Wangqing, she didn't get angry. She started rummaging through her belongings, seemingly hoping to trade something for a can, but unfortunately, after searching for a while, she couldn't find anything to offer and could only look on longingly. Wangqing continued driving forward. The surroundings were too chaotic for him to find any traces, and seeing his energy running low, he had to temporarily abandon the idea of regrouping. According to the map, he headed towards the gas station near the Pingsong market. The sky was gradually brightening. Wangqing activated silent mode and navigated through the streets. occasionally taking down a few mutated creatures with a shot to the head, turning them into energy points. His energy points were steadily increasing, having already reached over 280, with 300 within reach. Wang Chung felt increasingly hopeful, knowing that upgrading to a level 2 battleship was just around the corner. The journey was relatively safe, and as he arrived near the gas station, he was surprised to find a bustling area filled with survivors. The scene was quite lively. Chapter 51. Is your car a bottomless pit? All survivors. Wang Cheng's vehicle slowly moved forward. He didn't see any signs of the military. Instead, there were various private cars and colorful survivors. They gathered in groups, frantically scavenging for supplies and fossil fuels at the gas station. One group of survivors, numbering more than 20, armed with various firearms and knives, had taken over almost the entire gas station. While they were hoarding fuel, anyone else wanting to refuel had to pay them. Despite this, cars and small groups of survivors still lined up to refuel, exchanging supplies for gasoline. They not only filled their tanks, but also wanted barrels of oil. They needed fuel to use their vehicles. Although there were many abandoned cars on the road that could be used directly or for oil retrieval, that was too cumbersome and dangerous. For a lone individual with limited supplies, it might be manageable, but for a group of survivors with families, it was undoubtedly best to refuel directly here. Therefore, those gathered here were mostly organized survivor groups, creating a scene reminiscent of a bustling crowd in a post-apocalyptic world. However, they did not erupt into any conflict. Firstly, this is a gas station, and secondly, due to the gathering of people, various mutated beings are approaching from all directions. It won't take long before this place becomes a perilous area surrounded by these entities. Therefore, everyone is racing against time. Even the group of dominant survivors controlling the gas station charges relatively reasonable fees, allowing others to accept it quickly, buy, and leave. Su Ling reminded, be careful. These survivors don't adhere to any rules. Wang Cheng naturally understood this. His vehicle, though small, consumes a lot of fuel, converting fossil fuel into battleship energy. He needs 7 to 8 tanks of fuel just to fill up, making him a true fuel consumer. If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have specifically come to the gas station. He could have chosen to look for other abandoned vehicles on the main road to siphon fuel. However, his vehicle requires too much, making that option too troublesome, hence his current situation. Wang Cheng slowly drove forward. Among the group of survivors charging at the gas station, a thin man approached. What do you need? For your small vehicle, filling it up would require at least a small pack of biscuits. But your car is electric, right? Don't get it wrong. This price is still considered reasonable. Most survivor teams have some supplies, and this little supply is generally manageable, which explains why everyone is relatively cooperative. Wang Cheng glanced around. The thin man's companions were scattered in the vicinity, keeping an eye out for mutated beings while also being wary of the other survivors. Wang Cheng directly tossed the 2 liang of raw rice he had just collected from the grain store to the man, saying, fill it up. The thin man was somewhat surprised, pondering the 2 liang of rice in his hand, his face showing some excitement as he whispered to his companion, this might not be a fool. This pack of rice is at least 2 liang, much more valuable than a small pack of biscuits. According to our charges, it would be enough to fill a bus, and for this small vehicle, it should be quite profitable. His companion whispered back, Shu, keep your voice down, don't let him hear. In fact, both Wang Cheng and Su Ling in the vehicle had already heard. Su Ling couldn't help but say, hey, didn't you hear? You're giving too much. Wang Cheng remained silent and drove the car to the fuel pump. The thin man personally ran over to fill Wang Cheng's tank, surprised to discover that Wang Cheng was indeed using fossil fuel. He felt he was taking advantage of Wang Cheng, silently pleased with himself, and quickly started refueling. However, he soon began to sense that something was off. How much fuel could such a small car take? A minute passed, and the display showed the cost had surpassed 300. It seemed like a bottomless pit, with no indication of reaching a full tank. Wang Cheng glanced at the dashboard. His energy levels were rising slowly. The fossil fuel being added to the battleship was being rapidly converted into the ship's special energy. For the thin man, this truly felt like a bottomless pit. In the blink of an eye, the cost exceeded 500, and Wang Cheng's vehicle still wasn't full. A normal sedan should be filled up between 300 to 400, but when it reached 500, it was already beyond comprehension. The thin man was taken aback, even stopping the refueling to take a few glances. If he continued, that small amount would not be a gain, but a loss. Wang Cheng leaned out of the car and asked, why did you stop? It's not full yet. The thin man's expression changed. This isn't right. You must have modified this car. You're trying to scam fuel. Wang Cheng replied, you said to fill it up for a pack of biscuits. And I gave you more than enough. What do you mean by this? Are you scamming me, or am I scamming you? Isn't this gas station state-owned? You're just trying to profit off the apocalypse. The thin man stepped back, convinced he had been tricked, and immediately started shouting for help. Soon, the leader of the survivor group, a middle-aged man, approached. He looked refined, like a small business owner, dressed cleanly, slightly overweight, and without any visible weapons. After listening to the thin man's words, he frowned, glancing at Wang Cheng's very compact car. This isn't an electric car. And you've spent 500 without filling it up? The thin man said, Boss, I think there is something wrong. This guy might be here to scam fuel. He has probably set up a big tank inside, draining it from the gas tank, which is why it seems endless. The small boss frowned and approached, knocking on Wang Cheng's car window. Brother, are you looking for trouble? Meanwhile, not far away, his subordinates began to gather, some even bringing what appeared to be a machine gun obtained from the military, aiming it in this direction. The atmosphere became tense. Su Ling grew anxious. But Wang Cheng remained calm, grabbing the shotgun, rolling down the window, and looking at him. What's the matter? I've already given you the money you wanted. Why won't you fill it up? You say I'm looking for trouble, but I think you're the one causing it. The small boss immediately noticed the shotgun in Wang Cheng's hand. His heart skipped a beat. However, he wasn't without courage. He wouldn't have dared to approach alone otherwise. His gaze instinctively moved to the back of Wang Cheng's car. Wang Cheng noticed his gaze and shifted slightly. Guessing what he was thinking, he wanted to see where all that fuel was going if the car could take that much. If you want to see, I'll show you. Even surrounded by a crowd and facing a machine gun, Wang Cheng remained unfazed. The small boss took a quick look, and his expression changed again. The car was small, but the back was completely filled with supplies. The amount of supplies could rival the 20-plus people in their group. One car, 2 people, with so many supplies? And most importantly, with all these supplies, there was no way such a small car could hold that much fuel. The thin man behind him saw the supplies too. His face changed, eyes blazing with greed, almost bursting with desire. The small boss was both confused and alarmed when he heard Wang Cheng say calmly, My vehicle is this size. Do you think I'm cheating you out of fuel? I just want to fill it up, nothing more. But if you want to start something, you can try it. Let's see if your machine gun takes me out first, or if I eliminate all of you first. The first part of Wang Cheng's statement was delivered in a calm tone, but as he continued, his voice lowered, and a fierce intensity became evident. Wang Cheng was deliberate in his approach. He showcased his supplies and weapons to convey that he was not to be trifled with. If the small boss failed to understand or didn't care, Wang Cheng wasn't afraid of them. However, what he did worry about was that this was a gas station. Once the shooting started, there was a real danger of blowing everyone up, and killing wouldn't yield any energy points. Although this group was despicable for profiting in the apocalypse, Wang Cheng didn't want to get involved to that extent. If these people didn't take a step back, he certainly wouldn't go looking for trouble. Chapter 52. Tightening the pressure. Inside the gas station, the atmosphere was tense, and Wang Cheng's statement was sharp and revealing. The small boss quickly came to his senses, noticing the cold glint in Wang Cheng's eyes, causing a slight tremor in his heart. He immediately took a step back, reaching out to stop his greedy, thin subordinate from acting rashly, saying, You make a good point. You're not looking for trouble. Fill him up. The thin subordinate was stunned, disbelief written on his face. They were not good people themselves, having managed to survive in the apocalypse to this extent. And he couldn't understand why his boss didn't just take advantage of such a big opportunity with only 2 people and a vehicle full of supplies. Normally, they would have seized the chance, taken the supplies, and left the other party with their life at most. But this time, the small boss shot him a stern look. His authority in the survivor team seemed high, and the thin man trembled slightly. Though puzzled, he didn't dare to ask further and quickly followed the middle-aged boss's instructions to continue fueling Wang Cheng's vehicle. The remaining subordinates, receiving the small boss's signal, dispersed and turned their weapons away. The tense atmosphere relaxed instantly. The small boss personally stood aside, watching the thin man fuel Wang Cheng's vehicle. The 92-octane gasoline cost over $9 a liter, and after filling up for a total of $1,200, Wang Cheng finally called for a stop. Preparing to drive away, the small boss pondered for a moment, then proactively blocked Wang Cheng's vehicle, not only returning a bag of rice, but also offering a pack of cigarettes, saying, Brother, my name is Chen Jigua. Before the apocalypse, I ran a few sign companies. I know how hard it is to meet in these times. Consider this tank of gas a gift from me, and this pack of cigarettes as a way to make friends. I hope you can give me this face, and if you need anything in the future, feel free to ask. Wang Cheng silently looked at him, accepted the items, nodded, and replied, Wang Cheng hopes to see you again. With that, he rolled up the window and drove away. Su Ling was a bit surprised and said, Isn't he trying to cause trouble for you? Instead, he wants to be friends with you. What's going on? And what's up with your vehicle? Wang Cheng remained silent, driving forward quietly. In fact, Wang Cheng had also been prepared to take action, but since it was a gas station, he preferred to avoid conflict if possible. Therefore, he first displayed his resources and made a strong statement, hoping that if the other party could understand, there would be no need for confrontation. If they couldn't comprehend, he wouldn't hesitate to act. However, he didn't expect that Chen Jigua would be a clever person, quick to respond, thus avoiding this confrontation. Looking back, it was no surprise that Chen Jigua had so many subordinates and weapons, occupying the gas station without clashing with anyone. He was clearly someone who could read the situation well. Having connections with such a person wouldn't hurt him. Of course, for Wang Chung. The most crucial thing was that his battleship's energy was already fully charged. He actually wanted to load a few more barrels of fuel, but unfortunately, his battleship didn't have enough space. It was already at its limit. Now, he could drive recklessly in the urban area, fully activating all the functions of his battleship. After they left, the thin man was also surprised and asked, "Boss, are we just letting them go like this?" Chen Jigui shook his head and said, "What do you understand? This person is not ordinary. Just considering how he remained unfazed when we surrounded him, and look at that vehicle of his. Filled to the brim with resources. I've observed that his territory is fine, and he didn't use any underhanded means. The fact that he managed to get so much fuel means there is something we don't understand. It shows that his capabilities exceed our imagination. Did you notice? That vehicle looks like a battered electric scooter, full of scars, even with bullet marks, but those marks didn't penetrate the body of the vehicle. It looks almost new inside. This only indicates one thing. There is something off about his vehicle. And that kind of gaze and calmness he has is not just for show. He truly has confidence to fight against over 20 of us. When he spoke to me and showed off his resources, he was reminding me that they aren't afraid to take action. If I hadn't noticed that, you and I might have ended up with someone lying on the ground right now. Two individuals carrying so many resources must be true experts. We might be numerous and could potentially kill them, but how many of us would have to die? Our resources aren't too scarce right now. There is no need to offend such ruthless characters. The thin man showed a shocked expression and asked, "Are those two really that powerful? Boss, are you suggesting that vehicle of his is a special type? Could it be something like the military special forces on TV? I don't know. Nor do I want to find out. Times have changed. The weak band together while the strong walk alone. In this era, no one knows if the people we encounter are ruthless characters or big shots. Those who seem ordinary might actually be awakened ones or even special operations personnel from the military." Shinji was said, "Do you know why I only took resources from those ordinary survivors while occupying the gas station? Limited greed allows everyone to live well, but if greed becomes foolish, it's like digging one's own grave. We must be cautious. Otherwise, we might not even realize how we perished." Meanwhile, Wang Chung had already traveled a certain distance from the area. Over by the gas station, many survivors had gathered, and numerous mutated entities were approaching, swaying and lingering around their targets. Silently passing by them, Wang Chung leaned out of the vehicle and shot one, accumulating energy points. His energy points were nearing 300. At this moment, Su Ling remained silent, her gaze fixed on Wang Chung, filled with curiosity and inquiry, but she didn't ask anything further. Back at the hot pot restaurant, she initially thought Wang Chung and his companions were just a few capable survivors. Later, she believed Wang Chung had awakened as a level 2 awakened, but now she suddenly realized that this person before her was quite extraordinary. Unfortunately, Wang Chung didn't explain anything to her, nor did he acknowledge her thoughts. He drove forward, feeling anxious about losing track of Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao. Uncertain of their situation, this time, being chased by the mutated giant birds, Wang Chung gained quite a bit, but also paid a significant price. If he couldn't find anything in this area, with the apocalypse looming, he might have to wait until he could regroup with the military forces to see if they could meet again. Wang Chung's current goals were only two: upgrading the battleship to enhance combat power and heading to Fengtian to find his parents. Setting aside the notion of helping the world once he succeeded, his parents had raised him for a lifetime. Now that he had the system and the support of the battleship, how could he not care for his parents? He wished he could sprout wings and fly to Fengtian. However, his current strength was insufficient. The distance between Haicheng and Fengtian exceeded 300 kilometers. Even before the apocalypse, it took hours by train, let alone now. The cities were dangerous, and while the mutated entities in the wilderness might not be as dense, who knew what terrifying creatures lurked in the wild? Wang Chung was deep in thought when he suddenly hit the brakes, as a group of survivors emerged ahead. He recognized them, Chunlan and others from the Pingsong marketplace. They were still driving that dilapidated bus. And the security staff along with 3 doctors and nurses were crammed into 2 vehicles, all mixed together, fleeing for their lives in the apocalypse. Both sides were surprised to meet under such circumstances, but fortunately, there weren't many monsters around. Wang Chung jumped down, with Su Ling closely following. Chunlan was also stepping down, looking at Wang Chung and letting out a sigh of relief. "Are you alright? That's great. After the commotion yesterday, we thought you didn't make it back." The doctors and nurses who had been brought by Wang Chung greeted him warmly, as if they wanted to jump out of the vehicle to shake his hand and establish a connection. Although Yi Qijing was not an awakened, his observational skills seemed to surpass Chunlan's. He glanced at Su Ling behind Wang Chung and frowned, asking, "Where are Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao? We got separated. Is it possible that the mutated entities I stirred up posed a threat to you?" Wang Chung inquired. He remembered that Chunlan and Yi Qijing's plan was clearly to stay at the Pingsong shopping center and wait for military rescue. How did he end up running out by himself? Chunlan shook her head and said, "It has nothing to do with you. Do you remember that monster in Haicheng University? Its spore legion has spread over here, and we have nowhere to hide. We can only run." Wang Cheng was slightly taken aback by this. It spread out in such a short time? The city was shrouded, and he was only a few kilometers away from the Pingsong shopping center, yet he could not see what was happening there. "Yes, we can't wait any longer." Yi Qijing's expression was also serious. "We have no choice but to run out and find a way for ourselves. Look around. Haven't the survivors suddenly increased? They are all fleeing in the same direction as us. No wonder there hadn't been many people active in this area just a couple of days ago. There were so many at the gas station just now, as if they had appeared out of nowhere." It turned out that everyone had been forced to abandon their hiding places and emerge from the shadowy parts of the city to escape desperately. Wang Cheng felt a sinking feeling in his heart. That terrifying level 5 mutated creature from Haicheng University was still expanding and mutating, closing in step by step, as if it wanted to swallow the entire Haicheng and all of them, turning them into its nourishment. Chapter 53. Each going their own way. When it came to the terrifying monster from Haicheng University, everyone's expressions dimmed. No one had expected things to develop this way, and no one wanted danger to close in, but the current situation was not optimistic. If no one stopped that monster, it seemed only a matter of time before the entire Haicheng University became its territory. Soon, it was Yi Qijing who broke the silence. "Forget it. This is not something we should be thinking about while running for our lives. We'll just run where their SA way. Wang Cheng, since we have shared hardships for a while, why don't we travel together for a bit?" Although Yi Qijing was just an ordinary person, he was quick-witted and clear-minded. He knew Wang Cheng's capabilities, and now that they had met, he didn't want to let go of this strong ally. Chunlan didn't think too much and simply said, "Yes, it's better to have each other's support. Su Xinghai and Zhang Chaoji have their own fates. We will definitely find them." Her eyes sparkled. She was serious about wanting to support each other with Wang Cheng. Wang Cheng glanced at Su Ling behind him and then looked at Yi Qijing and Chunlan in front of him. He understood Yi Qijing's intentions very well, but Chunlan's sincerity made it a bit difficult for him. However, after a moment of silence, Wang Cheng shook his head. He wasn't planning to team up with this group. Their goals were different. Whether it was Yi Qijing or Chunlan, their goal was merely to escape, to meet up with the military and get farther away from the monster. Joining them would turn Wang Cheng's actions into mere flight. But Wang Cheng's goal was to accumulate energy points to upgrade his battleship and ultimately head to the capital to find his family there. Teaming up with Chunlan and the others would mean wasting his own time and energy. "No need. I'll go on my own. I might want to hunt more mutated creatures and even attract their attacks and hatred. Walking with you might put you in danger, so it's better if we part ways." Yi Qijing and Chunlan both showed expressions of regret, but they did not insist. Yi Qijing simply said, "All right, is there anything you need us to do?" Wang Cheng shook his head. He lacked nothing. At that moment, he noticed Su Ling standing behind him, who had been silent since earlier. After a moment of thought, he pulled her out. Su Ling exclaimed, "Hey, what are you doing? I actually have something I need your help with. This girl is a survivor I picked up on the road. She has helped me, so I've been keeping her with me. However, it's also dangerous for her to be with me. You're heading to meet with the military, and if it's convenient, I hope you can help me take her with you." Wang Cheng thought for a moment and specifically pulled Yi Qijing aside to avoid the others and briefly explained Su Ling's identity issue. He didn't mention it to Chunlan because she could sometimes be overly emotional and idealistic. In Wang Cheng's view, Yi Qijing, the former vice president of the student council, was calmer, even though he was younger than Chunlan. When it came to weighing pros and cons in such matters, Wang Cheng preferred to trust Yi Qijing to make wise decisions. After hearing Wang Cheng's explanation, Yi Qijing narrowed his eyes and asked, "Can I ask who is behind her? Have we heard of them? Are they a big shot from Haicheng?" "I don't know." Wang Cheng shook his head and said, "But I'm sure her identity is genuine." Yi Qijing nodded and replied seriously, "I understand. Thank you. I will definitely protect her." Yi Qijing clearly recognized that while it seemed Wang Cheng was entrusting the girl to them for protection, her identity meant that whoever protected her would have connections with the official survivor forces in Haicheng. This would allow them to live more comfortably than other survivors, making it a lucrative deal, especially for Yi Qijing and the others. They already had many survivors on their side, so adding one more would not be a burden. Thus, the benefits far outweighed the risks. Wang Cheng smiled faintly and said, "I can't just pass you a hot potato. It's nothing." After discussing with Yi Qijing, he turned around to announce the result. However, Su Ling seemed a bit unhappy and said, "Wang Cheng, don't keep calling her a girl. You're only a few years older than me, right? I want to follow you. You're a rare level 2 awakened in Haicheng, and I need to ensure your safety and take you to the survivor gathering point." As soon as Su Ling said this, Wang Cheng had no immediate reaction. But Yi Qijing and Chunlan were both taken aback, looking at Wang Cheng in surprise. They have been hiding in the Ping Song shopping mall. Although they are not very clear about the military's official classification between the awakened and the mutated, they are not foolish, especially Chunlan and her companion, who have studied the awakened with Wang Chung and believe that there is still room for advancement beyond their current level. They just haven't found the way in. Now, upon hearing Su Ling's words, they naturally come to a realization. Wang Chung has likely reached that inaccessible level, which Su Ling refers to as a secondary awakened being. However, you really are an awakened being. Moreover, have you broken through to a higher level of awakening? Chunlan couldn't help but speak up, eager to enhance her own strength. Previously, in the hospital, Chunlan had suspected that Wang Chung was an awakened being because he had once killed a mutated domestic cat with his bare hands, displaying power far beyond that of an ordinary person. At that time, she suspected Wang Chung was a strength-type awakened being, but he had always avoided the topic. Now, she was certain. On the other hand, Yi Qijing stood there in rare silence, unable to come to his senses, staring blankly at Wang Chung as if it were their first meeting. The surprise Wang Chung brought him was overwhelming. They were both from Haicheng University, yet the gap between them was so vast. Yi Qijing had thought that Wang Chung was just a bit braver and had access to firearms. But he never expected that Wang Chung was actually an awakened being, and even a rare secondary awakened being in the entire Haicheng. Before this, Yi Qijing had never even heard of Wang Chung. All this time, Yi Qijing believed that he and his peers at the university were the elite of the school, and he had known most of the outstanding talents from previous years. Yet at this moment, he felt a bit dazed. Could it be that the school, as others said, was filled with self-important individuals who mingled in student councils and social circles, while the real big shots kept a low profile and advanced quietly? Otherwise, how could he have never heard of such an elite like Wang Chung before? In that instant, Yi Qijing felt as if his entire life had become a blur. Wang Chung, unaware of his thoughts, felt a bit embarrassed when Su Ling exclaimed so loudly. He knew his own situation well. He was hardly an awakened being, let alone a secondary one. To say it out loud would be misleading. No, it's not that exaggerated. If I were a secondary awakened being and knew how to break through, Su Xinghai would have already reached that level, so don't say such things. While responding to Chunlan's doubts, Wang Chung reached out and playfully flicked Su Ling on the forehead. Su Ling widened her eyes, looking somewhat cute. That's settled then. You will follow them to meet the military, and I'll go my own way. However, Chunlan, Yi Qijing, I think I will eventually seek out the military as well, and we will meet again. I hope that if you have the energy, you can help me find out about Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao. Listening to these words, both Yi Qijing and Chunlan nodded seriously. Su Ling was reluctant and shouted that she wanted to stay behind Wang Chung, but was pulled back by Chunlan, their advisor. At this moment, Su Ling showed a hint of childishness, shouting a few words. Unfortunately, Wang Qing paid her no mind, turning to get into the vehicle and parting ways with Chunlan and the others, each heading down their own path. Chunlan and the others were making their way through the desolate and dilapidated city, aiming for a survivor gathering point, while Wang Chung charged toward an area teeming with mutated creatures, ready to unleash devastation with his weapon at the ready. After nearly a day's rest, Wang Chung could clearly feel that the exhaustion from the previous night was gradually recovering, and he was once again able to unleash his power with both hands. However, unlike Su Xinghai and Chunlan, who could use their abilities dozens of times in a day, Wang Qing estimated that his ability could only be used twice. Of course, compared to the abilities of Su Xinghai and Chunlan, Wang Qing's power was undoubtedly more explosive and possessed greater destructive capability. In Haicheng, smoke billowed as Wang Qing's warship, marked with scorch marks, cut through the long street, charging directly toward the mutated creatures. Chapter 54, Upgrade. Level 2 Warship. The sky was darkening, and flames spread. In a ground-floor storefront, a group of survivors was trapped, screaming in terror. 5 or 6 mutated beings blocked the entrance, shaking their severed heads and lunging at a young couple. The couple, who had been tightly embracing, stumbled backward in panic. But in the face of imminent death, the young man suddenly pushed his girlfriend out toward one of the mutated beings. The girl was caught completely off guard by this turn of events. Her face filled with shock and despair as she looked at the boy. His expression was twisted with fear as he screamed while running into the crowd. I'm sorry. I want to live too. Didn't you say you liked me? For my sake, consider this as doing it for me. The mutated creature lunged at the girl. She was pushed out and fell to the ground, dazed and seemingly unaware of how to escape. In reality, at such close range, there was little chance for an ordinary person to evade, and she would surely be killed by the mutated being. However, the expected death did not come. A heavy gunshot rang out, and a bullet accurately shot from outside the street, piercing through the head of the mutated creature. Accompanied by a dull thud, the creature collapsed, its body convulsing violently before going still. The remaining mutated beings at the entrance turned and howled as they charged toward the new target. A figure was seen jumping out of a vehicle from the other end of the street, walking toward the oncoming mutated creatures without changing his expression, resolutely firing his weapon. A high-explosive grenade shot out, and flames surged into the sky. With a deafening explosion, the 5 or 6 mutated beings were instantly blown away, scattered, and heavily damaged. The few that remained alive were left with severed limbs, writhing on the ground in agony. Other survivors, witnessing the scene, were left pale and terrified, retreating in fear. Yet the person remained unfazed, stepping into the sea of blood, executing one shot after another to finish off the half-dead mutated beings. The person in question is Wang Cheng. He has been wandering around the nearby urban area for an entire day. By now, dusk is approaching, and he is still hunting mutated creatures. During this aimless hunting, Wang Cheng discovered that his efficiency in hunting mutants alone is far inferior to when he collaborates with others like Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao. After all, an individual's strength is limited, but Wang Cheng found another effective method to seek out other survivors. The terrifying mutated giant trees spreading from the direction of Haicheng University have forced survivors in this area to flee. Today, there are many survivors on the streets, and those being pursued by mutants are even more numerous. In this situation, Wang Cheng only needs to look for sounds of screaming and fighting. By following those sounds, he is bound to find a group of mutants. Most of these mutants are drawn to the other survivors and are often caught off guard. With a shot from behind, Wang Cheng can easily take them down. Therefore, towards the end of his hunting today, he actively sought out survivors to pick off the mutants. Of course, for Wang Cheng, this is an easy hunt, but for ordinary survivors who cannot even fend off a single mutant, his presence is like a miraculous savior. His reputation is spreading in this circle, with many survivors talking about a mad mutant hunter who, instead of fleeing, is actively hunting monsters. Truly insane. At this moment, as Wang Cheng is cleaning the battlefield, a girl who had been pushed away by her boyfriend stumbles up from the pool of blood and rushes at the boy, giving him a fierce slap. The boy, looking dazed, steps forward, wanting to explain something, but ultimately just sighs and walks away silently. The girl sobs uncontrollably, and at that moment, everything between them collapses in the face of humanity. Wang Cheng merely glances at them before turning his head away. He has seen too many scenes like this. In the apocalypse, many people exhibit ugliness and ferocity that were never seen before. That is the darkness of human nature. Yet he has also witnessed the greater brilliance of humanity, where some are willing to sacrifice themselves for others. Everyone is different. Moreover, there are very few like Wang Cheng who can even turn the tables and hunt mutants. For the vast majority of survivors, every second is filled with fear. If a mutant sets its sights on them, death is a likely outcome. Wang Cheng was once such a survivor, living on the edge, where a single mutant could easily kill him. Therefore, he somewhat understands the goodness and evil that can erupt in the face of life and death. Everyone is fighting for survival, and the distinction between right and wrong may only be known to the individuals making those choices. As to whether they can be at peace with their conscience, Wang Cheng was preparing to leave directly after cleaning up, as he had done before, but at that moment, he heard a voice behind him. Turning around, another beautiful woman stumbled out. The woman was in her early 30s, with a mature and alluring appearance, and her figure was well-proportioned, fitting the type of a confident and elegant woman. She ran out from behind and firmly grasped Wang Cheng's hand, pressing her body against him, pleading, "Please take me with you. I know you. You are the expert who hunts monsters everywhere. I beg you to take me along. I am willing to do anything for you." Wang Cheng frowned, seeing that he remained silent. The woman even went so far as to pull down her clothing, disregarding the fact that it was not yet completely dark, trying hard to show herself in hopes that Wang Cheng would take her along and protect her. "Please take me with you. You can do anything you want with me. I don't want to live like this anymore. I can help you with many things. I only ask that you take me with you." At that moment, any sense of dignity and personality seemed unimportant. She was just an ordinary person, by herself. She could die at any moment, and only by becoming a subordinate of someone like Wang Cheng could she survive safely. Unfortunately, Wang Cheng had no intention of entertaining such thoughts. After a busy day, coupled with the few mutated creatures he had just killed, Wang Cheng's energy points had reached 321, enough to upgrade his level 2 battleship. Wang Cheng was eager to upgrade the battleship and was not swayed by the woman's appearance. Taking her along for a bit of attractiveness was out of the question. He felt sympathy for her, as he had once been a survivor like her after his rebirth, but there was nothing he could do. He, too, wanted to survive. He needed to grow stronger and find his parents. Wang Cheng knew very well that his parents were not young anymore, and in this anxious apocalyptic world, their situation was similar to that of these ordinary people. The longer he delayed, the smaller the chance of seeing them again. Thus, Wang Cheng quietly withdrew his hand and walked away, leaving the woman staring blankly as he left. Eventually, she numbly pulled up her clothing and walked toward other survivors. Wang Cheng was already gone. The nearby urban area was becoming chaotic. As night deepened, flames erupted, and the air was filled with thick smoke. The sky was illuminated by the crimson glow of fire as Wang Chung boarded his battleship, slowly moving forward and soon disappearing into the deep darkness of the night. He was several kilometers away from the market area. Although Wang Chung had mostly been wandering nearby that day, his goal was still to head toward the survivor gathering point in Haiqing. He believed that if Su Xinghai and the others were safe, their ultimate destination would surely be that location. Meeting up with Su Xinghai and the others, then taking the military's fast transport to leave Haiqing for Fengtian should be much easier. Moreover, in Wang Chung's heart, he had not given up on the earlier plan of possibly cooperating with the military. Wang Chung still believes that if he can get help from the military, the speed of accumulating energy points to upgrade his warship will increase exponentially. However, the only issue remains that cooperating with the military makes it difficult to guarantee his own safety and position. Although Wang Chung has the system in hand, once cooperation begins, if his warship hasn't team-matured, it will be hard for him to gain any influence, which could lead to adverse outcomes. This is also why he has this plan but has yet to put it into action. At this moment, after traveling a certain distance, Wang Chung slowly stops. This is an abandoned residential building, an old-style structure. Below this building, there is a row of garages converted from bungalows, and around, there are hardly any monsters. On the contrary, gunfire can be heard from all directions. The military and survivors are active nearby. Here, without a doubt, is relatively safer. It is undoubtedly the best choice to spend the time needed for the upgrade. As the level of the warship increases, the time required for upgrades gradually increases. Wang Chung does not dare to take it lightly. He chooses this place to begin upgrading his warship. The system prompts him to spend 300 energy points to upgrade the current warship to level 2. Dear host, do you confirm the upgrade of the currently bound warship to level 2? The upgrade is expected to consume 300 energy points. Do you confirm? Upgrade confirmed. Wang Chung takes a deep breath, feeling excited. This is his third time upgrading a warship, and with 300 energy points. He is eager to see what changes will occur. Chapter 55, I Can't Fly. Warship scanning in progress. Upgrade is about to begin. Estimated time required for upgrade, 20 minutes. The consumption of 300 energy points has been deducted. A faint white light envelopes the entire battered vehicle body. With the level 1 warship shrouded in the glow of the upgrade, Wang Cheng's heart skips a beat. Last time, it took 7 minutes to upgrade from level 0 to level 1, but this time, upgrading from level 1 to level 2 has nearly tripled the time. With the increased consumption of energy points, the changes to the warship are likely to be even greater, leading to more enhancements. The garage is dark, and the garage door has been manually lowered by Wang Chung, blocking out the dense gunfire outside, making it sound like it's coming from another world. In the silence, only Wang Chung's eyes shimmer with light as he watches the warship slowly upgrade. At this moment, the system prompt sounds in his ear again. Your warship is about to upgrade to level 2, and you can gain 2 black technology module bonuses. 1. Anti-gravity low-altitude flight module. 2. Single-shot missile launcher. 3. Low-power electromagnetic traction device. 4. Overload electromagnetic pulse generator. 5. Rapid escape ejection flight cabin. Wang Chung has been waiting for this prompt, and at this moment, his heart leaps. This upgrade allows him to choose 2 black technology module bonuses, and the selection has expanded from 3 options to 5. The first 2 are the same as before, while the last 3 are new. However, with 5 options available, choosing 2 still poses a dilemma. Wang Chung instantly falls into deep thought once again. The low-power electromagnetic traction device. Is it a type of electromagnetic weapon? It might be useful for dealing with metals. And on a truly modern battlefield, it could be considered cutting-edge technology. However, most mutated creatures are flesh and blood, so this device seems to have limited application. At best, it could be used to seize some metal resources without leaving the vehicle, but its usefulness is only in special circumstances. In the long run, it could definitely be seen as a god-level technological module, but in the short term, its assistance is minimal. While it's true that those who do not plan for the future will face immediate troubles, we are currently in an apocalyptic era, with the city facing numerous crises and mutated creatures lurking about. Looking ahead, one might as well be dead, so the immediate concerns take precedence. And the option was promptly set in motion. The electromagnetic pulse was also quickly dismissed, although it could interfere with communication signals and electronic devices. Achieving remarkable effects in modern warfare, it would be of little use against mutated creatures. The technological modules provided for upgrading the battleship were comprehensive, and this category was also among the options. These 2 items were instantly passed over by the leader. He then determined that this time, he had to secure a missile launcher. His battleship could no longer rely on rifles as onboard weapons. It was rather embarrassing and insufficient in firepower. Thus, he had to choose between a flight module and an escape pod, which left him somewhat hesitant. The escape module appeared crucial, but if the battleship were lost, he figured escaping would be futile. Ultimately, he made a decision. I choose the first and second options. The chosen technological modules have been confirmed and will be loaded into the battleship module. Upgrading the battleship, please wait. This time, the waiting felt exceptionally long. Sitting in the warehouse, the leader gradually quieted down, waiting silently. During this time, he was horrified to hear the chilling cries of a terrifying mutated giant bird above him. He initially thought the creature had somehow found him and was coming after him, which sent shivers down his spine. Because at that moment, the battleship had not yet completed its upgrade, and an attack would be troublesome. However, the cries of the two mutated giant birds merely swept over him and quickly faded into the distance. Shortly after, it seemed that a large number of mutated entities were stirred up and headed in that direction, with continuous howling. Not far away, there were sounds of intense gunfire and explosions, indicating fierce combat was taking place. It sounded like a large-scale engagement between a well-organized force and mutated creatures. The leader finally breathed a sigh of relief. If mutated creatures were to break in now, he would be in trouble. In this apocalyptic world, where was there a safe place within the city? Fortunately, he had been cautious, choosing this enclosed garage and pulling down the door, which had kept him out of danger. Time passed second by second, and for the first time, he felt that 20 minutes was incredibly long. Finally, the light enveloping the battleship gradually faded, and his eyes brightened. His battleship was upgraded. The system's notification sound rang densely in his ears. Dear host, the battleship you have locked on has completed its upgrade and is now at level 2. The entire ship has undergone significant changes, with upgrades to the power system and navigation mode. New modules have been loaded, and the armor alloy steel plates have been fully repaired during the upgrade, greatly enhancing the overall performance of the ship. The anti-gravity low-altitude flight module is online. The single-launch missile launcher module is online. The short-distance navigation module is online. And the transformation function is online. Listening to this series of system prompts, Wang Chung was filled with excitement. This upgrade could be described as a significant leap. His battleship could truly fly this time. When Wang Chung turned on the flashlight, the full view of the Level 2 battleship instantly appeared before him. At first glance, it still resembled a car, a normal-sized black sedan. However, the coating was very understated, and the design exuded a sharpness akin to a drawn sword. Its presence rivaled that of luxury cars worth millions, and compared to the previous appearance of the vehicle, it was as if they were two different cars. If it were before the apocalypse, driving such a car on the street would definitely turn heads and attract a lot of attention, especially among schoolmates. As Wang Chung gently ran his hand over the car's body and opened the door, the texture of the Level 2 battleship felt like a matte surface, rough and cold, conveying a sense of toughness. Upon Wang Cheng's inquiry, the system informed him that upgrading the Level 2 battleship to a Level 3 battleship would require 900 energy points, which was twice the amount needed for the Level 2 upgrade. For Wang Chung, 900 energy points was an astronomical figure. However, most of his thoughts were still focused on his current battleship as he walked along it, observing every detail. The interior of the battleship was quite similar to that of a normal sedan, though the overall height seemed slightly taller than usual. Sitting inside and gripping the steering wheel, the substantial texture felt almost identical to before, but when the vehicle's systems powered on, the functionalities of his battleship had increased significantly. First and foremost, the battleship's operational capabilities had improved. This time, his battleship could switch modes. Currently, it was in car mode, but Wang Chung could activate flight mode at any time, transforming his vehicle into an aircraft. Not only did it have a rocket propulsion system, but with the anti-gravity flight module, Wang Chung could even achieve vertical takeoff and landing. Of course, with this upgrade, the energy points he had just filled were now reduced to about half. This wasn't because the fossil fuel he had filled up was suddenly gone. Rather, the total storage capacity of the energy module for the Level 2 battleship had increased. Wang Chung was still using the same fuel, but with the increased capacity, the percentage displayed naturally showed a decrease. Secondly, the missile launcher of the Royal City is also fully loaded, situated beneath his warship, ready to fire at any moment. According to the feedback received from the warship and the system, the ammunition for this weapon module can indeed be replenished using energy points, costing 20 energy points to fill one missile. As long as there are enough energy points, the Royal City can unleash a barrage. However, after upgrading the warship and spending 300 energy points, he only has 21 energy points left, which means he can exchange for at most one missile. Nevertheless, the missile launcher comes with one missile already loaded, so counting both, he has a total of 2 missiles at his disposal. Additionally, the rifle previously loaded into the warship is still there, located inside the left side of the warship, ready to be activated at any time. Finally, the armor plating of the warship has been restored with the upgrade, and some of its basic functions have been enhanced. For example, the infrared thermal radar system can now detect a range nearly double that of before. With the changes in the warship's size, multiple modules are perfectly concealed throughout the vehicle, making it indistinguishable from a real vehicle. At this moment, sitting in his secondary warship, the Royal City gently caresses the hull and then directly activates the transformation mode. Instantly, the entire body begins to change, resembling a transformer. The wheels rise, and the metal structures on both sides reshape and connect, elongating the warship's body. Soon, accompanied by the roar of the anti-gravity engine, dust and debris scatter, and a garage collapses with a loud crash. As a streamlined black dual-wing aircraft ascends gracefully from the garage. In aircraft mode, it is almost unrecognizable as having transformed from a car. It resembles a small fighter jet instead, with 4 seats reduced to 3. The cockpit is at the front, with the 2 rear seats positioned behind it. The entire aircraft has a slender, streamlined structure, with triangular wings on both sides, entirely dark. The cockpit where the Royal City sits features a bulletproof reflective design, making it impossible to see who is inside from the outside, creating an impression of darkness and power, filled with a sense of mysterious technology. Although it can still only be considered a high-tech aircraft compared to a real warship, this is already quite extraordinary. Not to mention, such an anti-gravity engine that can take off vertically without external devices is something no country around the globe can produce. The Royal City grips the steering wheel, which has transformed into a control stick, and suddenly takes off. However, he has never flown a plane before. He has a driver's license for cars. But as he flies straight ahead, he nearly crashes into a nearby building. At the critical moment, he urgently increases altitude, flying erratically in the sky, even spinning wildly in a 360-degree rotation, leaving him dazed and confused. Sitting in the aircraft, he shouts, "Damn it, I can't fly. System, is there an operation manual?" Chapter 56. Black Lightning. The people in the city were left dumbfounded. In the game, he had piloted planes and even shot down quite a few. But flying in reality was not as simple. The battleship has been bound to you. The intelligent module will assist your flight. Please maintain a calm mindset and take control of your battleship. Trust yourself. You are the spacecraft, and the spacecraft is you. The system's prompt was of little help to him. As a first-time pilot, he felt immense pressure and discomfort, completely unsure of how to manage the controls. He nearly crashed into buildings on either side, his wings sweeping dangerously close, even severing a high-up billboard. Luckily, his vessel was sturdy. Otherwise, the situation could have been dire. After a few chaotic minutes of flying around the city, he barely grasped some flying techniques and gradually stabilized. He began to understand the meaning behind the system's words. This was his battleship, bound to him, with him as its sole pilot. Only he could operate it, and thus the intelligent module would provide him with unique assistance. The entire battleship did not have as many controls and buttons as a real fighter jet. Instead, it was quite simple. He only needed to manage direction and force, while the intelligent system would handle all the unseen details, assisting his flight. Realizing this, and gradually mastering the techniques, he finally gained control of the situation, stopping the erratic spinning and crashing. With the help of the anti-gravity flight module, his second-level battleship could even hover momentarily in a fixed position. At that moment, he was hovering above the original garage, silently observing and maintaining balance. Below him, a mutated creature had already spotted him, jumping and howling on the ground. Unfortunately, even at low altitude, he was still hovering a dozen meters up, and no matter how the creature howled, it couldn't reach him, only watching helplessly in frustration. Haha, aren't you tough? Come and catch me in the sky. Haha. Now that he could fly, he could swoop over the heads of numerous mutated creatures, while they could only watch in disbelief. He even thought to himself that his current second-level battleship might stand a chance against that mutated giant bird. Lost in thought, he suddenly had an idea, slightly tilting his battleship and aiming his rifle. He fired a shot. His ship-mounted rifle had only 3 bullets left. The shot missed entirely because he still struggled to maintain balance, leading to a misfire. However, the mutated creature remained oblivious to its impending doom, continuing to roar, seemingly eager to bring down this noisy giant before it. Unfortunately for it, in the next second, its head was pierced by the bullet, collapsing with a thud. No longer moving. Once a novice, twice familiar, Wang Chung was gradually getting accustomed to his warship. After taking down the mutated creature, he took a deep breath and slowly ascended in altitude. From his position, he could see flames spreading among the buildings ahead, accompanied by the sounds of gunfire and the howls of monsters, indicating a fierce battle was unfolding. The mutated giant bird he had just encountered seemed to have headed in that direction as well. Clearly, the military and the mutated beings were engaged in intense combat. If it had been before, Wang Chung would have fled faster than a rabbit upon seeing the mutated bird, as he understood well the wisdom of retreating when outmatched. However, the situation was different now. His warship had been upgraded and undergone tremendous changes. He was eager to find an opportunity to unleash his wrath. Even if he couldn't take revenge on the mutated bird, he could take advantage of the military's distraction to eliminate a group of mutated beings and acquire energy points. Thus, amidst the buzzing sound, Wang Cheng's warship surged forward like a bolt of dark lightning, racing through the streets of Haicheng under the fiery night sky towards the battlefield. The battlefield he sensed was merely 2 streets away. It was an armored camp deep within Haicheng, led by a seasoned soldier named Zhang Ruizhen, whose rugged features reflected his serious demeanor. They had been temporarily dispatched from a neighboring area with the mission of assisting in the evacuation of survivors from the Pingsong marketplace to Haicheng University. Although the military had lost actual control over Haicheng, they could still quickly discern major changes within the city due to modern technological enhancements. For instance, upon the emergence of the terrifying monster within Haicheng, the military took immediate emergency action. In fact, despite the dire situation in Haicheng, the military had always operated with a plan, progressively searching the urban area for survivors. The vicinity of Haicheng University and the Pingsong marketplace, being deeper in the city and closer to the coast, were treated as lower priority search and rescue locations, which is why military presence in that area had been sparse until recently, when a few scattered troops began to enter. According to the plan, Zhang Ruizhen's unit was supposed to reach this area in a few days to help evacuate survivors, but the situation had changed. The monsters around Haicheng University were continuously expanding, severely threatening the survival environment of nearby survivors, leading to mass panic and casualties. Thus, his unit had recently advanced towards this direction to gather a large number of survivors. At first, everything went smoothly. Their armored unit split into several parts for a coordinated rescue, and within half a day, they had saved nearly 300 survivors and joined forces with 2 other rescue teams. However, late in the evening, they encountered a fierce attack. Their target was simply too large. A large number of mutated entities surged out from the darkness, crazily charging at their formation. Moreover, some terrifying large mutated creatures appeared, causing Zhang Ruizhen's troops to scatter. He had only about 50 men, 2 armored vehicles, and 1 tank. Initially, relying on his experience, Zhang intended to quickly eliminate this batch of mutated entities and leave, but unexpectedly, the monsters kept multiplying. Not only did they fail to eliminate the initial mutated entities, but they were also surrounded and trapped in an office building. There were too many monsters in this area. The most critical issue was that they were also attacked by 2 terrifying mutated giant birds. These were definitely Tier 3 mutated creatures. At that moment, their tank was still advancing, preparing to break through. However, the mutated giant birds swooped down from the sky, unleashing 2 fiery blasts that turned 1 tank into a horrifying inferno. The soldiers inside refused to give up this crucial firepower, desperately firing to hold back the swarming mutated entities. In the end, they were cooked alive by the extreme heat, and the entire tank was engulfed in a raging fire, lighting up the entire street. Zhang Ruizhen's escape plan thus collapsed, and he retreated with his entire team to the rear office building. After nearly half an hour of fierce fighting, they suffered heavy losses. Standing on the 2nd floor, Zhang was frantically shooting outside, but his heart grew colder. From his vantage point, he saw countless mutated entities outside, almost filling the street. Yet, this was not the most terrifying part. The most frightening aspect was the 2 mutated giant birds circling in the sky. They were incredibly fast and resilient. Even when hit by 20mm caliber cannon fire, they seemed unaffected and could soar freely, hardly showing any signs of damage. With a swift turn of their heads, they opened their massive jaws, unleashing a frenzied and chilling flame that instantly blasted a hole in the building where they were hiding. Each attack resulted in the loss of a firepower point and countless soldiers. They were completely suppressed, and reinforcements were delayed. In the city, battles were tense everywhere. Who could come to their aid? Over 300 survivors hid in darkness and shadows, panicked and screaming, overwhelmed by boundless fear. Zhang Ruizhen's heart turned cold. He knew it was over for him. Troops in other positions tried to communicate with him via shortwave radio, hoping to come to the rescue. But Zhang only stared at the circling monster outside, silent. He hoarsely stated, "Don't come. That's an order. Abandon my unit. All units disperse. Withdraw from the current area. Next, I will lead the remaining troops and all survivors to attempt a breakthrough from the west. This is my last attempt, and no one else is needed for support." Zhang Ruizhen was well aware that his small force was entangled with the mutated creatures. Even if reinforcements arrived, it would be futile. He was ready to take a final gamble, trying to break out one last time, and whoever could escape would do so. He looked at his aide-de-camp, ready to issue the order. However, his aide was staring outside in astonishment, saying, "Captain, look quickly. With the situation being what it is, what else is there to see?" Zhang Ruizhen felt a deep sense of desolation in his heart. He looked outside, and his expression suddenly changed. Because on this bleak battlefield, a black flash was rapidly approaching from the distance. Cutting through the chaotic scene, it was an aircraft that Zhang Ruizhen had never seen before. Chapter 57. Which unit are they from? Wang Cheng was also taken aback when he arrived here. The battlefield was indeed quite brutal. The central office building was engulfed in flames, with several areas blown out, leaving astonishingly large holes, the edges burning fiercely. From a high vantage point, the office building at the crossroads was surrounded by monstrous figures, a dark mass writhing and roaring forward, resembling a scene from hell. On the ground, debris was scattered everywhere. A tank was burning like a torch, its cooling system completely destroyed from the intense heat, and the inside had already turned into an oven. Numerous mutated creatures rushed past it, trampling on human civilization, mocking humanity's fragility, and launching attacks on the office building. On the first and second floors of the office building, several fire points were set up, all firing madly at these mutated creatures. According to the infrared thermal radar feedback, there were numerous dense red dots inside the office building, likely survivors protected by the military. The sheer number of overlapping red dots made it impossible to determine the exact quantity on the radar. At that moment, a frenzied howl erupted from one side, as a familiar mutated giant bird from Wang Cheng's past roared out from behind the office building, opening its massive jaws, radiating a red glow. A fiery line shot out instantly, hitting a heavy machine gun position on the second floor of the office building. The moment the fire line struck, it exploded, triggering a chain reaction of military weaponry, blowing the window frames and walls apart. The soldiers in that position didn't even have time to react, perishing instantly in the explosion and flames. However, as they fell, fearless soldiers rushed in from behind, armed and firing wildly. Some of these soldiers were very young, their hands trembling as they gripped their weapons, yet they bravely stood at the collapsed and burning opening of the building, firing at the mutated giant bird. They were determined to defend their line to the death. Wang Cheng noticed that the mutated giant bird also had wounds, its wings bore numerous bullet holes. Yet those weapons, which could easily kill a human, posed little threat to it and did not inflict any substantial harm. Wang Cheng squinted as he saw them. Indeed, the two mutated giant birds were here. It was a narrow path for enemies. This time, Wang Cheng had no intention of fleeing. He began to accelerate, fixating on the mutated giant bird ahead, directly pursuing it to take it down. Meanwhile, beneath Wang Cheng's warship, missile launchers were rising from the aircraft, and a high-explosive missile was ready to launch. Wang Cheng's arms were already gripping the control stick of the weapon tightly. On the aircraft's operational interface, he began to locate and describe the targeting reticle, which was closely tracking the mutated giant bird. Wang Cheng wanted to seize this opportunity to avenge the blood feud. He intended to take down both of the mutated giant birds that had hunted him down before and offer them as a sacrifice today. However, the two mutated giant birds had also spotted Wang Cheng. They seemed equally surprised by the sudden appearance of this flying behemoth. The one being chased by Wang Cheng flew frantically, while the other circled around from a different direction, preparing to attack him from behind. A warship and two mutated giant birds were engaged in a frenzied chase in the sky, creating a thrilling spectacle. At that moment, amid the chaos, Wang Cheng seized an angle and suddenly opened fire. The 5-meter-long missile, with its cold coating illuminated by the thruster's flames, shot out of the launch bay of his secondary warship like thunder, trailing a long flame as it raced through the sky, pursuing the mutated giant bird. Simultaneously, with the piercing sound of a collision alarm blaring, Wang Cheng abruptly lowered his altitude, diving towards the densely packed crowd of mutated entities on the street below the office building. Behind him, the other mutated giant bird took this opportunity to swoop down, its claws sharp enough to tear through the armor of a light armored vehicle, directly reaching for Wang Cheng's secondary warship. Wang Cheng was confident that this attack wouldn't damage his ship. However, that didn't mean he would choose to take it head-on, regardless of whether he could withstand the attack. Facing it directly might seem impressive, but it was ultimately a foolish act in combat. Any damage would mean consumption. Wang Cheng realized this only after he had his warship. Previously, watching movies and anime, he enjoyed the chaos of mechs and warships colliding and explosions everywhere. Now, his warship was precious to him, and he couldn't allow the mutated giant bird to launch a successful ambush. He dived rapidly and then quickly pulled up. This was actually a high-difficulty maneuver. If he were piloting a real fighter jet, his skills wouldn't be sufficient. Of course, if it were a real fighter jet, he wouldn't be able to maneuver with such agility either. After all, this was his warship. Though it resembled a fighter jet, it was closer to an aircraft. With the assistance of the intelligent operating system, the complex maneuver became much more manageable. Thus, Wang Cheng executed the dive and pull-up maneuver effortlessly, showcasing both elegance and sharpness. At the same time, as he lifted his head, he witnessed a brilliant explosion in the sky. The missile had detonated. The rising flames even illuminated one side of the office building, making the entire street as bright as day. Inside the office building, countless military personnel looked up in astonishment. Zhang Ruizhen looked at the scene in astonishment. His aide whispered, "That recent dive and pull-up maneuver is not something an ordinary pilot can achieve. I didn't see any other fighter jets. This is an independent mission. Who is he from in our combat zone? Also, I've never seen this model of fighter jet before. Could it be a test aircraft?" The aide was filled with surprise, and in that brief moment, countless speculations arose. However, Zhang Ruizhen just stared intently at the sky, remaining silent and showing no intention of responding. This was because the missile just launched by Wang Cheng had missed its target. The mutated giant bird was too agile. Despite Wang Cheng finding a tricky angle in an attempt to ensure a hit and conserve precious missiles, he still failed. At the critical moment when it was about to be hit, the creature ascended sharply and released a fiery blast. The missile, detonating in midair, illuminated the entire twisted, crimson body of the mutated giant bird, resembling a phoenix reborn from the flames, its terrifying screech shaking the battlefield. Many soldiers and survivors displayed expressions of disappointment and regret. They desperately hoped that Wang Cheng could take down the mutated giant bird in one strike. Although they had no idea where the sleek black fighter jet had come from, it was undoubtedly piloted by humans, and they believed it was there to assist them, so they naturally thought Wang Cheng would succeed. Damn it! Wang Cheng's ammunition bay was instantly depleted. The complexity of aerial combat was far from simple. Wang Cheng took a deep breath and decisively commanded, "System, expend 20 energy points to replenish the missile launcher's ammunition." "Dear host, do you confirm?" "Confirm. 20 energy points have been deducted. You have 2 energy points remaining. Required energy is now in place. Weapon system ammunition is being 3D printed. Current progress, 15. Estimated time remaining, 7 seconds. So this is 3D printing technology?" Wang Cheng's heart stirred, but 7 seconds felt critical in this tense battle. At that moment, another giant bird turned sharply from a different direction, evading the concentrated fire from the office warriors, its agility and speed leaving the bullets behind. It opened its massive jaws and shot a fiery blast directly at Wang Cheng's battleship. However, Wang Cheng made another astonishing move. He dodged like lightning, dangerously lowering his altitude to skim the ground, avoiding the terrifying fire from the mutated giant bird. He arced across the battlefield, nearly colliding with an office building. The aide was astonished. Does he dare to fly like that? If those mutated beings are warriors like us, they would have shot him down by now. The aide's voice abruptly ceased as Wang Cheng, flying close to the ground, suddenly leaped up again, his sleek black battleship crashing through the fiery aftermath of an exploding missile. Sparks streamed along the dark wings and hull. Wang Cheng's battleship was sharp as a sword, like a bolt of black lightning, soaring into the sky and swiftly approaching the mutated giant bird that had just evaded a missile. The battleship and the mutated giant bird drew closer in an instant. The second missile, also printed by the city after exhausting its energy points, whizzed out. He had lowered his altitude just now to gain those 7 precious seconds. Now, the city fired directly at close range. "Since you are so agile and can dodge my missiles, I will close the distance infinitely and see if you still have the time and space to evade." It was an incredibly thrilling scene as the missile shot out, almost exploding right in front of them. The blazing fire immediately engulfed the sky, raising the hearts of countless onlookers in the office. Until the next moment, the mutated giant bird's body shattered and fell, burning, while the dark battleship of the city burst through the flames, roaring through the sky. A faint cheer erupted from the office. "How else can we fight if we don't fly like this?" Zhang Ruizhen, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His eyes filled with excitement. His hands were already clenched into fists from tension. He knew they had hope. "Damn, amazing. Which unit are these people from? We are saved." Chapter 58, Revenge. Inside the office building, many military personnel and survivors became excited. Initially, they had felt despair as monsters surrounded the building and mutated giant birds lurked. But now, this fighter jet tearing through the battlefield was undoubtedly a powerful morale booster. Moreover, with one giant bird killed and the other attracted by the city's battleship, the pressure on the office building lessened significantly. The military personnel no longer had to worry about being attacked by the mutated birds and could unleash their firepower, fiercely resisting the relentless assaults of the mutated entities below. These mutated entities, although strong and threatening to ordinary people, posed little threat under the concentrated fire of the military. Especially with the military holding their ground and firing madly, the mutated entities fell like wheat being cut down. Under Zhang Ruizhen's command, they began to regain control and even showed signs of a counterattack. However, Zhang Ruizhen was well aware that whether they could truly break out depended on whether the unfamiliar model of the battleship could take down the other mutated giant bird. Therefore, he kept a close watch on the battlefield above, sweating for the pilot engaged in low-altitude combat. The city was indeed locked in battle with the other mutated giant bird. After slaying one, the last remaining giant bird let out a mournful scream, its voice filled with sorrow and panic. In contrast, Its attacks against the city grew increasingly frenzied as it desperately pursued. It seemed to possess more intelligence and emotion than ordinary mutated entities, as it had companions and family, just as the humans it had killed did. A fierce determination shone in the city's eyes. These two mutated giant birds had chased him relentlessly, even causing him to become separated from Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao during a panic-stricken escape. After enduring for so long, the tides had turned. And now that he had the chance for revenge, the city would not let this opportunity slip away. Just now, the corpse of the mutated giant bird crashed down with a loud bang, engulfed in flames, landing among the mutated creatures below. At the moment, the commander had no time to collect the special serum, but his energy points were instantly credited. A total of 55 energy points were filled in an instant. The commander had previously 3D printed a missile, costing 20 energy points, which had caused his energy points to drop rapidly, leaving him with only 2. Now, with this round of replenishment, his energy points surged to 57, allowing him to launch 2 more missiles. The commander was thrilled. With his advanced technology battleship, he could even sustain his battles through combat. This was something no one else could compare to. Others, no matter how much ammunition they carried, could not match the commander's ability to replenish energy points at any moment. As long as he had a continuous supply of energy points, he could keep firing. Just moments ago, after exhausting his ammunition in combat, he had killed a mutated giant bird and was immediately rearmed. From the initial level 0 battleship to the current level 2 battleship, the commander finally had some combat capability and superiority. If the level 2 battleship was already like this, what about the future level 3 battleship requiring 900 energy points to upgrade? The commander was filled with anticipation. He believed that although 900 energy points were a lot, that day would not be far off. The level 2 battleship he piloted shot up like a black lightning bolt. Behind him, the enormous mutated giant bird was in hot pursuit, its body glowing with a bright crimson light, launching a fiery attack. It was frantic, its howls piercing the air. However, being a biological entity, the commander accelerated vertically and quickly outpaced it, creating a distance of over 100 meters. Faced with the fiery attack, the commander easily dodged it. At the same time, the commander had already called upon the system, consuming 20 energy points to refill a missile, which was ready for launch. He still had 37 energy points left. Besides the one he just printed, he could print another. With 2 missiles, the commander was confident that it would be enough to send the last mutated giant bird to its end. The world below was burning at the edge, and the anti-gravity engine indicated it had exceeded its operational range and went offline. At this moment, the commander relied on the thrusters to soar upwards, speeding into the sky. However, the level 2 battleship was still a low-altitude aircraft. Its size was too small, and with so many functions compressed together, each function was somewhat limited. The current level 2 battleship could only reach a maximum altitude of about 1,000 meters. Now, the commander prepared to enter the low to mid-cloud layer, using the clouds for cover, looking back at the moon, and planning to take down the relentless mutated giant bird pursuing him. As he ascended, the thermal radar showed that the dense red dots gradually decreased, leaving only one red dot behind, desperately chasing him. It was the mutated giant bird, now completely frantic, pursuing him recklessly. During the chase, the commander took a glance at his battleship's energy status. The level 2 battleship consumed a significant amount of energy, far beyond the previous levels of 0 and 1 battleships. Especially in this flight mode, it consumes energy rapidly. At this moment, the energy in the capital ship has been more than half depleted, leaving only about half a tank. Following this, the capital ship directly entered the low to mid-level cloud layers. It was a dim night, with thick clouds covering the sky. The low cloud layer refers to clouds below 2,000 meters. At this moment, the capital ship reached nearly 1,000 meters in altitude, just piercing through the clouds. The surrounding visibility instantly narrowed. The howling of the mutated giant bird could be heard behind, but its pursuit speed suddenly slowed. It was just a creature, and in such a concealed environment, it would undoubtedly be affected, unable to lock onto the capital ship as easily as it could in open space before. It howled and chased outside the cloud layer, occasionally shooting a line of fire that pierced through the clouds, briefly illuminating the darkness. It couldn't see the capital ship, but the capital ship could see it. The infrared thermal radar scanned the surroundings, and the red dot representing the mutated giant bird was clear and accurate. Even though the capital ship couldn't find the mutated giant bird in its line of sight, it had already determined its location. The mutated giant bird, having lost its kin and gone mad, had long since lost its sanity. It howled and chased beneath the clouds, attacking wildly, completely unaware that the capital ship had silently arrived above its cloud mass and boldly fired a shot. The missile pierced through the clouds and directly hit the target. A large explosion erupted in the sky, blood splattering wildly. Within the flames, the mutated giant bird didn't even make a sound before being blown to pieces. its massive body falling helplessly towards the dim ground below. The system prompt immediately sounded. By killing this mutated giant bird, the capital ship once again gained 55 energy points. The energy points of the capital ship reached 92. After a fierce battle, having consumed 3 missiles, the capital ship still had nearly 100 energy points left. Watching the body of the mutated giant bird plummet, the capital ship let out a long sigh of relief. For the past 2 days, being hunted by these 2 monsters had left the capital ship feeling uneasy, fearing that at any moment, they might spring out from nowhere and take it down unexpectedly. But now, all of that was finally over. Its second-level battleship had successfully countered. These 2 mutated giant birds indeed had the audacity to challenge. Being capable of flight and even breathing fire, their strength formidable. They were the most powerful mutated creatures the capital ship had encountered along its journey, aside from the giant trees in the coastal city. Now, these 2 arrogant and terrifying mutated creatures had been completely defeated by the capital ship. Revenge had been served. Next, it was time to find an opportunity to collect their special serum. The capital ship had already been injected with the serum, so further injections from the mutated giant birds would be meaningless. The capital ship contemplated. Perhaps it could give 1 injection each to Zhang Chao and Su Xinghai. However, just then, the system suddenly emitted a sound. Dear host, special high-energy biological entity detected. Successful hunt expected to yield special serum and 300 energy points. Upon hearing this system prompt, the capital ship was initially taken aback, then suddenly shocked. At this moment, he was at an altitude of 1 kilometer, surrounded by empty clouds. Where could a special high-energy creature come from? Moreover, 300 energy points. What kind of terrifying creature could that be? Over this period, Wang Cheng had also figured out how much energy points a high-energy creature was worth, which only related to its strength and power. The stronger the creature, the more energy points it provided. By this calculation, the 2 mutated giant birds were only worth 55 energy points. What kind of horrifying existence could a high-energy creature worth 300 energy points be? However, what sent chills down Wang Cheng's spine was that since the system had already given a warning, it meant that this high-energy creature was right beside him. Yet, his battleship's thermal radar showed complete silence, with no targets detected in the vicinity. There were no signs of any warm-blooded creatures. So, where was this special high-energy creature? Chapter 59. Who saw that fighter jet? Below, the city was ablaze, and from 1 kilometer high, everything about the city seemed so small, chaotic, and dangerous. Up high in the clouds, it was eerily silent, as if the city below belonged to 2 different worlds. Wang Cheng's battleship was shrouded in clouds, with low visibility. He squinted, trying to see what was outside, but no one saw anything. Everything seemed normal, just as his thermal radar indicated. There appeared to be nothing moving around him apart from himself. But the system's warning couldn't be wrong. A chill crept up his back. Wang Cheng didn't know, but he realized he couldn't stay here any longer. Regardless of what else might be up in the sky, he had to leave immediately to avoid danger. Therefore, he quickly turned the battleship around, preparing to descend and collect the corpses of the 2 mutated giant birds to obtain the serum. However, it was fortunate that Wang Cheng was still in a stationary position at high altitude. The moment he started to move, he was suddenly attacked. Warning: the battleship has encountered an unknown impact. The alarm blared almost instantly. Wang Cheng felt as if he had been struck by an elephant. The battleship tilted sharply to one side. Before he could react, a heavy pressure suddenly descended from above. The opponent seemed immensely large, possessing unimaginable power. After just 2 impacts, the battleship's alarms informed Wang Cheng that the hull was damaged and the outer deck had cracked. Wang Cheng was horrified. The excitement of just having killed the mutated giant birds dissipated in an instant. Even now, after being attacked, he couldn't locate the creature that had struck him, and the battleship's infrared thermal radar showed no signs of detection. From the 2 impacts, it was clear that the system had indeed not made a mistake, and the entity that had collided with his battleship was immensely huge and powerful. Otherwise, how could such significant damage have occurred with just 2 hits? Given the strength of his battleship, Wang Cheng didn't know. He was desperately descending in height, panic bubbling within him. The special serum, worth 300 energy points, was incredibly tempting, but also immensely dangerous. Haicheng University, the mutated giant tree over there can yield 1,000 energy points, and that is a level 5 mutation. This one can provide 300 energy points, at least a level 3 or even 4 mutated creature. The most critical issue is that its traces cannot be captured by the main city. It is invisible, untraceable, and its nature is unknown. Facing it would be akin to seeking one's own demise. The main city has not reached the point of foolish overconfidence yet. However, as the main city continues to descend, that kind of impact has not reappeared. It seems that only at a certain height will one be attacked. A chill ran through Wang Cheng's heart. What exactly is up there in the sky? What could possibly be in the sky? Most of the creatures on Earth reside in land and ocean, even birds, no matter how large, have limits to the heights they can reach in flight, as they are still living beings. Moreover, birds cannot fly endlessly in the sky. They must land to rest. Therefore, theoretically speaking, under this global mutation apocalypse, the sky should be the most open and safest place. But what could it be? He suddenly felt a chill. Aside from the initial outbreak of the apocalypse, he seemed to have never seen military aircraft appear in the skies over Haicheng. As powerful weapons in modern warfare, the Air Force is undoubtedly a formidable force, yet why have they never engaged in the battlefield of Haicheng? Are the military aircraft deployed elsewhere on missions, or is there some other reason preventing them from appearing in the skies of Haicheng? Wang Qing did not know, nor did he dare to think further. His current level 2 battleship was clearly not a match for that unknown creature in the high altitudes. He could only continue to descend, diving towards the ground and quickly leaving. For a short time, ascending to high altitudes would likely be impossible. It was too dangerous. The invisible threat was even more terrifying than the mutated giant birds. Wang Qing's battleship, like a bolt of black lightning, dived down at high speed. But his landing point was not on the battlefield at the office building, but outside of it. Using the dark night sky as cover, his battleship was nearly indistinguishable. After landing in an area devoid of people and mutated monsters, Wang Qing's battleship transformed back from battleship mode to vehicle mode. Now a sleek black car again. It drove forward through the ruined city towards the office building. After killing 2 mutated giant birds, Wang Qing did not want to give up the precious special serum they possessed. Meanwhile, the battle towards the office building was actually nearing its conclusion. With the second mutated giant bird crashing down from the sky, landing with a thud, its massive body shattered. Zhang Rui's team immediately sounded the horn for a counteroffensive breakout. The soldiers in their ranks, all elite fighters, seized this opportunity. With the aerial pressure from the mutated giant birds lifted, they forced their way out of the office building. Breaking through amidst the siege of the mutated creatures, blood staining the ground and gunfire shaking the heavens. Zhang Rui's hen personally boarded an armored vehicle to charge forward, operating the vehicle's mounted cannon and unleashing a relentless barrage with the 20mm cannon. Even the mutated creatures with their formidable physiques were torn apart under such terrifying firepower, their bodies reduced to a bloody mess. After successfully breaking through, a large number of mutated creatures continued to tail Zhang Rui's unit. They fought while retreating, simultaneously gathering survivors. Many survivors emerged from the streets and surrounding buildings, voluntarily joining them in their retreat, causing the number of people in the group to steadily increase, making the team larger. Zhang Rui's hen seemed quite accustomed to this situation and handled it with ease. The growing size of the team did not affect their progress or safety, and they retreated in an orderly manner. However, throughout this process, Zhang Rui's hen kept gazing into the sky. In the darkness, visibility was poor, and he was somewhat worried about the fate of the mutated giant bird that had been shot down and what had happened to the fighter jet. Such an excellent aircraft and pilot were invaluable assets to the military. Moreover, for some unknown reason, the higher-ups had not dispatched a squadron of fighter jets to execute missions within the urban area until now. This was the first time Zhang Rui's hen had seen a fighter jet in the city, and now that they had succeeded in breaking through, he was particularly concerned. Fearing that the precious aircraft and pilots might encounter trouble while trying to rescue him, he issued several orders for his soldiers to keep an eye out for any signs of fighter jets in the sky and interrogated the survivors in the group, as well as those who had gathered from other directions after the breakout. Zhang Rui's hen placed great importance on this matter. During the fighting and questioning, Zhang Rui's hen actually managed to extract some information. Some survivors who had come from the direction mentioned claimed they saw a black fighter jet crash down vertically in a certain direction, disappearing silently. Zhang Rui's heart sank. Could it have crashed? But wait, why was there no explosion? He hurriedly searched the group and questioned survivors who had come from the direction indicated by the survivor. If it truly was a crash, he needed to find a way to rescue the pilot. Aircraft were precious, and skilled pilots were even more so. Wang Qing was drawn into this situation after Zhang Rui's unit had broken through. The successful breakout attracted a large number of mutated creatures away from the office building area, allowing Wang Qing to arrive and collect the special serum from the 2 mutated giant birds. With 2 unknown models of level 1 special serums in hand, Wang Qing was quite pleased. After considering his next steps, he decided to follow the military unit to see if he could acquire some fuel and ammunition, and to inquire about whether he could find Su Xinghai and others who were also following the military. He quietly trailed Zhang Rui's NS unit and happened to encounter them as they were absorbing more survivors. He intended to blend in, but unexpectedly, as soon as he mixed in, he was caught, and Zhang Rui's hen personally came to meet him. Before Zhang Rui's hen arrived, Wang Qing heard a soldier blocking his path say that their company commander wanted to see him to discuss the mysterious black fighter jet pilot. Wang Qing's heart skipped a beat upon hearing this. Could it be that my identity as a fighter pilot has been exposed? It shouldn't be. I thought I was being discreet. Chapter 60. Emergency Mission Wang Chung had hidden his identity and the warship entirely out of caution. Although he had always planned to cooperate with the military, figuring out how to initiate that cooperation and ensure his own rights was quite complicated. Even if he wanted to lay his cards on the table, this was not the right place to do so with these rescue teams. Therefore, he had no intention of fully exposing himself just yet. Just now, his secondary warship had swept across the battlefield, and he could confirm that no one had seen him inside the ship. The glass enclosure was completely invisible from the outside. At this moment, hearing those words made Wang Chung feel a chill. Could it be that he had truly been recognized? He only wanted to take advantage of the situation to gather some ammunition and intelligence. How could he have been exposed? Wang Chung maintained a calm exterior, but inside, he replayed his actions along the way. He had been very careful, even when collecting the remains of the mutated giant birds. He had done so discreetly and had specifically approached from a different direction. What went wrong? It was not until he saw Zhang Rui's hen that he understood. Wang Cheng's first impression of Zhang Rui's hen was one of cold steel, with a face like it had been chiseled from rock, blood-stained military uniform, and eyes that seemed to contain an iron-like coldness and ruthlessness. His mere presence exuded a natural air of intimidation. Anyone standing in front of him would feel a jolt of fear, instinctively shrinking back. Although there were mutated creatures pursuing them from behind, the overall situation of the convoy had stabilized somewhat. Zhang Ruizhen handed over the command to his deputy and personally rushed over, showing how much he valued that pilot and the aircraft. What would they do if it crashed? On the way here, Zhang Ruizhen was shocked to receive a message from the command center. They hadn't dispatched any aircraft to support them and even questioned where there were any fighter jets. With the situation in Haicheng spiraling out of control, the military could manage the large-scale changes in the area, such as the expansion of the mutated giant trees coverage at Haicheng University, but monitoring smaller combat zones had become increasingly difficult. Throughout the city, firefights erupted everywhere, and countless units, like Zhang Ruizhen's, found themselves in dire straits, fleeing, calling for help, or waiting for orders. The command center was nearly overwhelmed. Moreover, the interference from certain special mutated organisms releasing electromagnetic waves caused communication disruptions in some areas, leading to signal interruptions at times, further complicating the command center's ability to maintain detailed oversight. Upon receiving this news, Zhang Ruizhen became even more perplexed. He had clearly seen that black, lightning-like aircraft. There was no reason for it to lie about its existence. If they said there were none, then there were none. Did the command center not even know? Or was it sent down by someone at a higher level? Now, Hay City is filled with crises everywhere. Although Zhang Ruizhen is a battalion commander, there are many people deeply entrenched in the battlefield. What qualifications does he have to ask for a fighter jet from high-ranking officials that even the command center is unaware of? When he met Wang Chung, Zhang Ruizhen appeared somewhat distracted. After a brief self-introduction, he got straight to the point, pointing in a direction and asking, "Are you a survivor from that side? Did you see a black fighter jet?" Other survivors from that direction mentioned seeing a black fighter jet crash there. I want to verify this information. If it's true, we may need to rescue the pilot. If it's false, rashly splitting our forces could lead to unnecessary losses. I hope you can answer truthfully. After a pause, he glanced at the strangely peculiar Wang Chung, who seemed a bit out of sorts. Noticing the young man appeared frightened, he added, "Child, you don't need to be afraid. I mean no harm. I'm just asking you this question. Just answer truthfully." In reality, Wang Chung was not afraid. He was genuinely puzzled. It was strange for someone to inquire about him, the person involved in the incident. It dawned on Wang Chung that he had been overthinking. This battalion commander had no idea who he was. He was merely asking because he saw him come from that direction. However, Wang Chung was also quite surprised. He didn't know much about military matters and didn't expect his situation to be taken so seriously. This Zhang Ruizhen clearly was the commander of the survivors and military personnel, and he had personally come to inquire about someone who seemed relatively unknown. Have I drawn so much attention? Wang Chung fell silent for a moment before replying honestly, "Commander Zhang, I didn't see any fighter jets, let alone one that crashed." Zhang Ruizhen was slightly taken aback and regained his composure. The survivors he had questioned earlier, who were in their 30s and 50s, all claimed they saw a fighter jet crash in that direction. He had started to believe them, even coming to ask personally. Yet, this young man was stating a completely opposite account. "Are you sure?" "I am very sure. I came from exactly the direction you pointed to. And there weren't even a few monsters there, let alone a fighter jet. If there was a fighter jet, I would definitely recognize it." Wang Chung replied firmly, denying the claim. Zhang Ruizhen was momentarily stunned but nodded, glancing again towards that direction. "Thank you for the information. I understand now. Quickly regroup with the main group. There's no need to be afraid or panic. We will ensure the safety of you survivors." Zhang Ruizhen didn't just take Wang Chung's word for it. He believed more so because he felt that a fighter jet could not have crashed, and even if it did, it wouldn't have fallen in that location. Otherwise, he would have seen the flames from the explosion. Since there was none, it was likely that there had been no crash. And the jet had flown away at a low altitude. The pilot's skills seemed quite impressive. Hopefully he is safe. However, Zhang Rui's hen was deeply puzzled. Since no fighter jets had been dispatched from above, which unit did that fighter jet and its pilot belong to? After returning to the front line and discussing with his adjutant, Zhang Rui's adjutant also had a strange expression and said, "Could it be possible, Commander, that he is carrying out some other special mission and just helped us as a side task?" As he spoke, the adjutant glanced towards the distant Haicheng University, implying something quite clear. The mutated giant tree at Haicheng University had caused quite a stir, and it was inevitable that someone would be sent to monitor and observe it constantly to prevent any unpredictable and terrifying changes. Thinking about it this way, it seemed reasonable, and Zhang Rui's hen gazed into the distance. If that's the case, we are indeed lucky. Once I find out who he is, I must thank him profusely. It's not just a matter of saving our lives, but also saving the soldiers and survivors under our command. We must repay this debt. What Zhang Rui's hen didn't know was that his savior was currently hiding sneakily among their group of survivors, worrying about how to obtain ammunition. The convoy was moving forward, and the military personnel were busy protecting the survivor group, leaving no time to attend to Wang Cheng. Even the young soldier who had just spoken with Wang Cheng was now occupied, and given the soldier's integrity, Wang Cheng was quite certain that if he discussed buying ammunition with them, he would most likely be driven out of the convoy. So, how could he obtain ammunition? Recently, Wang Cheng's ammunition had become increasingly scarce. He had only one bullet left for his rifle, and other types, such as shotgun shells and pistol rounds, were also running low. Moreover, the toy bullets that had been his main source of ammunition were nearly gone. Although Wang Cheng had been planning to raid another toy store, plans often change, and he hadn't had the chance to do so, nor the time to pay attention to where there might be toy stores on the streets. Altogether, the toy bullets and the remaining ammunition amounted to just over 50 rounds. For an average survivor, this quantity might be sufficient, but for Wang Cheng, it was far from enough. Upgrading his battleship from level 2 to level 3 required a full 900 energy points, and to accumulate them quickly, weapons and ammunition were of utmost importance. In the moving convoy, it was also difficult for Wang Cheng to communicate with others. After searching for a while, he learned that there was a group of survivors caught in the fleeing crowd who seemed to be able to sell weapons and ammunition. Chapter 61. I changed my mind. The scale of Zhang Rui's convoy was growing larger and larger, a mighty procession. Just a short while ago at the office building, there had only been a little over 300 survivors, but now, after traveling less than 2 kilometers, it had expanded to 1,000. Survivors hiding along the streets all rushed out to join the military and flee together. Some of Zhang Rui's former subordinates, who had previously scattered, began to merge with the survivors, increasing the military's numbers. Within the convoy, there were even 2 tanks, one in the front and one in the back, firing to fend off attacks from the mutated creatures, becoming a source of reassurance for many survivors. Zhang Rui commanded effectively and maintained close communication with his superiors, retreating in an orderly manner while avoiding areas in the city that posed significant threats. This convoy resembled a giant ship navigating through tumultuous waves, progressing slowly. The military personnel formed a defensive line on the periphery to fend off dangers emerging from various directions, while those within the convoy felt somewhat safer. Many survivors were moving about, exchanging supplies. The military did not hinder these activities. Some survivors were armed and were tacitly allowed to carry weapons. The military even actively recruited survivors to participate in the defense of the entire fleeing convoy. At this moment, Wang Cheng made contact with a survivor group that was said to have a background. The group had 2 modified buses and over 30 people, exuding a fierce post-apocalyptic punk style, standing out among the dusty and weary fleeing convoy. They were selling resources to trade for others, using weapons and ammunition, even food, in exchange for medicines. Antipyretics, anti-inflammatory drugs, and even some health supplements were all part of their exchange catalog. Such survivor teams lacked ammunition and food, but were in dire need of medicines. They were quite generous. As soon as Wang Cheng's vehicle drew near, he saw a survivor trade a box of antipyretics for a full bag of supplies, attracting the envious gazes of many around. However, no one in the military convoy dared to take action. A few women approached, willing to spend the night with the survivors in exchange for a few pieces of bread. In this apocalyptic era, some things had become incredibly cheap, while others had become extremely valuable. This group of survivors was gaining trust through such exchanges. However, trading medicines for food was a difficult decision, raising questions about whether it was a wise move or a desperate choice. Fortunately, Wang Cheng had ample supplies of medicines, which he could trade. He had purchased a batch before the apocalypse, and aside from a bit used for Su Xinghai's fever, the rest had hardly been touched. He even scavenged more from a gastrointestinal hospital, including some intravenous equipment, making it possible to exchange for ammunition. As the convoy became bulkier, its progress slowed down. The walking survivors and those driving were nearly matching their speeds. Wang Chung approached and began to communicate with a man named Li Fangshan from the survivor group. Li Fangshan was a tall and thin man, standing at the back door of the bus, resembling a ticket seller. However, the submachine gun he held indicated that he was not a good person. He sized up Wang Chung, who had a slender build. The car he drove looked decent, but it was too dark to see what was inside. In these times, good cars were everywhere, and with a bit of luck, one could easily find one. A car was nothing special. He assumed Wang Chung was just an ordinary survivor and asked, "What medicine do you have? What food do you want to trade for?" Wang Chung got straight to the point. "I don't want food. I need ammunition, shotgun shells, pistol rounds, rifle cartridges. How much can you trade me?" Li Fangshan was taken aback. "How much can we trade you? That's quite a bold request. What can you offer?" He saw Wang Chung as an ordinary survivor who, lacking food, had no choice but to trade medicine for food. He didn't expect Wang Chung to demand weapons and ammunition with such confidence. As if they had plenty to spare, Wang Chung remained silent and directly retrieved a box of anti-inflammatory medicine from the passenger seat, out of sight. Li Fangshan squinted, thought for a moment, and replied, "Ammunition is valuable. We don't have much. Although we said we would trade ammunition, we didn't specify how." "Wait a moment. Let me ask." Li Fangshan quickly ran deeper into the bus. Before long, another tall and burly man walked over and said, "Brother, I'm Xia Ran, and awakened. I'm somewhat in charge here. I heard you want to trade medicine for ammunition?" Wang Chung glanced at him and nodded. "That's right. How much can you offer based on how much medicine we have?" Wang Chung didn't say too much. Xia Ran's eyes darted, and he said, "All right. This ammunition isn't like regular bullets. We got lucky to acquire it. I suspect you have a lot of medicine. So you must have also been fortunate to find it in a pharmacy that hasn't been completely looted, right? I want beat around the bush. We don't have shotgun shells. We can sell you about 500 rounds of pistol and rifle ammunition. We have more rifle rounds. But since ammunition is a consumable we also need, we can't sell you all of it, just this much. As for the price, I'll take any kind of medicine or health supplements like vitamins, 1 pill for 1 bullet. You can give me 500 pills of any medicine, and I'll give you all our bullets." At that moment, there was a sudden stir at the edge of the convoy, and gunfire from the military direction suddenly intensified, as if something dangerous was happening there. However, it had not yet affected them. Wang Chung glanced over and nodded readily. "All right." He then turned to start counting the medicine, quickly pulling out a bag of supplies. During this process, Wang Chung was also very cautious, intentionally raising the car window to prevent the other party from seeing his supplies. Although they were under military protection, Wang Chung did not want to complicate matters or cause any trouble. A normal transaction would suffice. But when Wang Chung rolled down the car window, that Xia Ran seemed to have been prepared for this moment, leaning in to peek into Wang Cheng's car, even finding a good angle to catch a glimpse of the large amount of supplies inside. There were so many supplies in Wang Cheng's vehicle that anyone looking would find it impossible for him to hide them. Xia Ran was taken aback. Medicines, food, a dazzling array of items. "Brother, it seems you've hit the jackpot," Xia Ran remarked. Wang Chung frowned slightly. He felt a bit uncomfortable with this guy's prying, but still replied, "1 hand for medicine, 1 hand for goods." Surrounded by military personnel, Wang Chung believed that even if Xia Ran felt greedy, he wouldn't dare to take any real action. Of course, if he did, Wang Chung wouldn't hold back either. This was also why he dared to come here for a deal. However, Xia Ran's eyes narrowed slightly, flashing for a moment. Behind him, Li Fangshan had already begun moving the ammunition, but at that moment, he suddenly raised his hand to stop Li Fangshan and shook his head, saying, "No, brother. I've changed my mind. You're going back on your word?" A cold glint flashed in Wang Cheng's eyes. Yet Xia Ran remained oblivious to the danger, saying, "How can this be going back on my word? I've changed my mind. I'm not selling you the ammunition anymore. I formally invite you to join us. How about it? We can share the ammunition. I see you're not looking to share ammunition, but rather to share my supplies." Wang Chung exposed Xia Ran's true intentions. "Ha ha ha, brother. Don't say it so harshly. It's good for you, good for me, good for everyone, don't you think?" Xia Ran's thoughts were indeed as such. He wanted to take Wang Chung down and divide his supplies. But since this was a military convoy, he couldn't act rashly and could only use this method to try to trick Wang Chung into their ranks. Once that happened, all the medicines and food in Wang Cheng's vehicle would naturally be divided among them. Seeing his thoughts exposed, Xia Ran first responded politely, but then spoke with a threatening tone. "Brother, my proposal is nothing but beneficial to you. Look at all these people. And with an awakened one like me here, you will definitely be safe with us. I advise you to make the right choice." This was a blatant threat. A cold glint flashed in Wang Cheng's eyes, turning into pure, chilling intent to kill. "Coincidentally, I am also awakened, and we have already discussed how to trade. I advise you to make the right choice as well." Chapter 62. He is actually a top expert. Hearing Wang Cheng's words, Xia Ran was momentarily stunned. He did not understand the sharp killing intent in Wang Cheng's eyes, He simply did not expect that this solitary person would dare to threaten them in return. Li Fangshan behind him even laughed. Brother, I see you're lucky to have gathered so many supplies, but don't let that make you think you're the chosen one. You can't be so arrogant. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't even know how you died. If Xia Ran's earlier words were a veiled threat, then Li Fangshan's words were a straightforward declaration of threat. You don't know how to appreciate kindness. You're seeking death. Wang Cheng's eyelids drooped slightly, one hand already reaching for the shotgun, while the other began to heat up, ready to take action at any moment. Are you sure you want to go back on your word? Xie Qi and his group, though numbering more than 30 people with 2 large buses, posed no threat to Wang Cheng at all. He had successfully slain 2 mutated giant birds. What were these 2 buses and 30-some people worth? If they had met in the wild, Wang Cheng would have already taken action. His only concern now was that this was a military convoy, as he planned to cooperate with the military in the future. Moreover, Wang Cheng had always held a good impression of the military and didn't want to cause them trouble or create chaos here. But if these people were intent on seeking their own demise, Wang Cheng wouldn't mind sending them off to their end. Xia Ran sneered, completely dismissing the idea that the person before them was a threat. There were more awakeners on their side, and half of the 30-some people were armed desperados who had committed numerous heinous acts during the apocalypse. They had only become somewhat obedient after merging with the military. How could they fear a lone survivor like this? Xia Ran's eyes flickered with murderous intent, ready to say something more, but at that moment, a sudden change occurred. From a diagonal position in the military's fleeing convoy, a deafening roar erupted, and the gunfire from the military abruptly ceased. Wang Cheng turned around in a flash and saw a terrifying mutated frog, nearly the size of a car, with sickly green skin. Under heavy fire, it leaped out from the edge of the convoy and directly into the crowd. Its rapidly flicking tongue, like a terrifying appendage, was lined with sharp teeth that could easily slice through anyone it touched, spilling blood and leaving corpses everywhere in an instant. The commotion that had just erupted seemed to have been caused by this mutated frog, as the frog charged into the survivor crowd with its formidable jumping power. The surrounding soldiers hesitated to fire, fearing hitting their own. Zhang Rui personally ordered 2 military awakeners to rush over, but it was too late. Amidst screams and desperate cries, the sickly green mutated frog sped through the crowd, slaughtering more than 20 survivors in a very short time. It too was panicked, howling as it attacked, rampaging through the humans and almost cutting the entire convoy in half. Xia Ran and Wang Cheng, who had just been in confrontation, changed color in unison and quickly moved aside to clear its path. Fortunately, the creature was in a frenzy and no longer recognized its direction, indiscriminately killing. Its path gradually moved away from Wang Cheng and the others. However, at that moment, Wang Cheng suddenly caught sight of a familiar face in the path of the rampaging mutated frog, someone who was panicked and had fallen to the ground, their face filled with despair and terror. Wang Cheng's heart jolted. He immediately changed his mind, and the black armored car that was reversing shot out like lightning, accelerating instantly. Xia Ran, who was also retreating, was taken aback. What kind of car is that? It starts off so quickly. At this moment, Wang Cheng sped out like lightning, his car crashing directly into the body of the mutated toad. This seemingly ordinary sedan managed to send the massive, heavy creature flying a good 7 or 8 meters away. The surrounding survivors scattered in a rush, forming a circle around Wang Cheng, while a familiar face among them fell to the ground, staring blankly at the car before him. However, the grotesque green mutated toad, though knocked away by Wang Cheng, did not sustain any serious injuries. Its ball-like body was dense with flesh, capable of withstanding bullets, making it extremely terrifying. Following the impact, it became enraged, using its powerful hind legs to launch itself directly at Wang Cheng's vehicle. At that moment, Wang Cheng pushed the car door open and stepped out. In one hand, he held a shotgun, while the other hand rose, glowing with a fiery red light. A fiery line shot out from his palm, aimed straight ahead. Wang Cheng was not an awakened one. This ability was granted to him through the serum obtained from hunting mutated birds. He estimated that he could use this ability twice within a span of several hours, far fewer times than true awakened individuals like Su Xinghai and Shenlan. However, Wang Cheng's ability did not require any external aid. He could generate heat on his own. The fiery line he shot out was extremely hot and had explosive power. The grotesque green mutated toad lunged at him as if it were charging directly into him. Accompanied by its horrifying cries and the sound of an explosion, this terrifying creature, which had wreaked havoc among the survivors' convoy, was struck dead center by Wang Cheng's attack. A massive gash exploded on its bloated belly, blood splattering everywhere as its body crashed to the ground, flames igniting along its form. It convulsed violently for a moment before lying still. Wang Cheng took a deep breath and withdrew his gaze. The people around him were almost all staring at him. Just a second ago, they had been fleeing, eager to distance themselves from the monster, but now they all paused in unison, dumbfounded by the scene. They had not expected that this terrifying creature, with its tough skin and thick flesh, could be taken down by a seemingly unremarkable young man like Wang Cheng. The awakened individuals from the military had not yet arrived, and the battle was already over. News quickly reached the front of the convoy, and Zhang Rue, upon hearing it, was taken aback. We have such powerful awakened survivors in our team. Who is he? Bring him to me. I want to meet him. He was unaware that the awakened survivor who astonished him was none other than the Wang Cheng he had just encountered. At this moment, Wang Cheng silently turned around and helped the familiar face on the ground to his feet. That person was none other than Wang Qi, someone he had met briefly at Haicheng University. Wang Qi was cheerful and enthusiastic, talkative, and shared the same surname as Wang Cheng. Wang Cheng had a deep impression of him, and having spotted him in the crowd, he couldn't just stand by and watch as he was about to be killed by the monster. Without hesitation, he chose to intervene and save him. The mutated toad was not killed in vain. It provided the city with 5 units of energy points. At this moment, the city had a total of 111 energy points. Previously, after defeating 2 mutated giant birds, the city gained 92 energy points, and later, by collecting serum and pursuing a convoy, the city eliminated some other mutated creatures, leading to the current harvest. 100 energy points were easily secured. To upgrade to a level 3 battleship, 800 energy points were still needed. Even for ammunition replenishment, that would be 5 missiles. The city felt confident that there were very few monsters in this region that could withstand 5 missiles, except for some special mutated creatures. Wang Qi, saved by the city, was now wide-eyed, almost at a loss for words, his expression a mix of surprise, joy, and disbelief. He recalled the last time he saw the city. It was already powerful, outstanding among the students, a figure of authority. Back then, he admired and envied him. After leaving the city, he encountered more survivors and realized that the city, compared to the brutal survivors and truly powerful awakened ones, was not that remarkable. But now, seeing the city again, he found it even stronger, surpassing all the survivors and awakened ones he had encountered in recent days, easily taking down a terrifying mutated creature in an instant. While others could only flee in panic, his feelings were quite complicated. Similarly complex were the emotions of Xie Ran in the vehicle behind. Watching the city effortlessly eliminate the giant mutated toad, his expression became very interesting. Next to him, Li Fangzhan couldn't help but blurt out, "That guy isn't just a lamb for slaughter. He is an exceptional expert." Chapter 63. The military invitation. Xie Ran looked at the city with a deep sense of wariness. The previous contempt had quietly faded. He knew the city might not be an absolute expert, but the skills displayed just now and the intensity of ability indicated that the city's awakened powers were certainly above his own. Xie Ran was well aware of his own limitations. Had he been in the same position as the city, he certainly wouldn't have had the means to take down such a large mutated toad in one strike. That toad could withstand regular caliber bullets and had forcibly broken through, proving its tough skin and strong defense. The ability to eliminate it in one hit was truly terrifying. At this moment, Li Fangzhan also reacted. Wow, we're all awakened ones, but that guy's firepower is just too great. If he really gets serious, one move could destroy our entire vehicle. Wouldn't we all be burned to death on the spot? Li Fangzhan and Xie Ran exchanged glances, both seeing the fear in each other's eyes. They were grateful they had acted directly, as they watched the city and Wang Qi over there. Xie Ran took a deep breath and said, "Quick, let us move in the other direction and blend in with the other survivors." He quickly decided to make a hasty exit. The convoy was chaotic, with people and vehicles jostling against each other. He believed that if he hid on the other side, he could avoid this person, as he didn't want to confront such a skilled individual. Unfortunately, Wang Qing still had his sights set on their supplies. How could he let Xie Ran and the others go? As Xie Ran's bus was about to leave, Wang Qing quickly called Wang Qi to get on the vehicle and move closer. Recently, due to the incident with the mutated frogs, the survivors had scattered, creating a small empty area in the convoy, which allowed Wang Qing to maneuver his vehicle closer. He rolled down the window and said, "Hey, don't leave. Are we doing business or not?" Xie Ran and the others were forced to slow down, exchanging glances with Li Fangzhan, their expressions grim. Wang Qing smiled, raised his arm, and a small flame flickered in his palm, saying nothing but silently watching them. Xie Ran's expression darkened. This was a threat. Just moments ago, they had threatened Wang Qing, demanding he join them and be forced to share his supplies. Now, Wang Qing had turned the tables, threatening them and forcing them to trade. Many survivors around were watching, and a few women he had captured and educated were also looking over. Xie Ran's composure began to falter. "Brother, you don't need to go this route. You're an awakened one, and so am I." Wang Qing sneered, "Then you can try. I doubt you'll even know how you died." Upon hearing this, Li Fangzhan and Xie Ran's faces turned extremely grim, as if their expressions could drip water. This statement was a direct echo of what Li Fangzhan had previously threatened Wang Qing with, now thrown back at him. Wang Chung was unrelenting. He knew that the force he had just displayed far exceeded that of an average survivor, and he intended to intimidate and threaten. If you want to play tricks against me, I'll play by my own rules. When dealing with villains, one must use villainous methods. Although his abilities could only be used a few times, others were unaware. The key point was that Wang Chung had a warship as his backing. Even if his awakened abilities could only be used twice, his warship would be enough to send all of Xie Ran's people to their demise. However, Wang Chung did not believe that Xie Ran and the others would take action. He was alone, while Xie Ran had 2 vehicles and over 30 people along with supplies. If a fight broke out, he could retreat if needed. With nothing to lose, he could easily set a vehicle ablaze. As long as Xie Ran wasn't foolish, he wouldn't risk losing benefits just for pride. The more Wang Chung used force to threaten, the more Xie Ran would have to back down. Because Wang Cheng's displayed power was strong enough, Xie Ran couldn't afford to lose. After a moment of shifting expressions, Xie Ran finally gritted his teeth and said, "We never said we wouldn't trade. What we mentioned earlier was just a suggestion. Seeing your exceptional strength, we wanted you to join us. Since you're unwilling, let us proceed with the normal trade." Xie Ran was furious and wished he could kill Wang Chung on the spot. However, as Wang Chung had assessed, he could not afford such losses. The 2 vehicles, supplies, weapons, and even the beautiful women and brothers he had accumulated through blood and fire during this apocalyptic period were too valuable. Wang Chung was clearly not easy to deal with. Even if Xie Ran managed to kill him, given Wang Cheng's displayed combat power, he would at least have to burn through 1 vehicle's worth of people and supplies. And he might end up dead himself. The losses would be too great to bear. A direct confrontation was out of the question. Therefore, he had to resort to patience. Following Wang Cheng's lead and finding a way to back down gracefully, Xie Ran stared at Wang Chung, his eyes nearly spitting fire. Although he had chosen to endure for now, his heart was filled with resentment. He thought to himself that a wise man does not suffer immediate losses. He would wait for the chaos of the apocalypse when everyone would be too busy taking care of themselves. And he would find an opportunity to take revenge and eliminate this person. No matter how strong Wang Chung was, there would always be moments of injury or distraction. When that time came, Wang Chung squinted at him. He could see through Xie Ran's thoughts and simply said, "Hand over the ammunition, old Wang. You take care of this. Let us start with the goods. Brother Xie, you don't mind, right?" Okay. Wang Chi was momentarily stunned, suddenly snapping back to reality, and hurriedly stepped forward to retrieve a heavy box of ammunition. Wang Chung glanced at it, confirming that it contained real bullets, and let out a sigh of relief as he picked up the bag of medicine he had prepared earlier. However, his movement paused slightly. He looked at the barely contained anger of Xie Ran, fell silent for a moment, then placed the bag back down and only took out a box of anti-inflammatory medicine to hand over to Wang Chi for delivery to the other party. Wang Chi was bewildered. He had been in a state of panic while fleeing with the main force, still recovering from the shock of being saved by Wang Chung. Now, as a middleman, he was even more confused, just following Wang Cheng's instructions as he had done in the school's supermarket. But when Xie Ran received the box of medicine, his expression suddenly changed. "Brother, what do you mean by this? We agreed on 1 medicine for 1 bullet. Are you going back on your word?" Wang Chung's expression remained unchanged as he replied with a faint smile, "How is this going back on my word? I simply changed my mind. Medicine is precious. You're getting a box of ammunition in exchange, which is a great deal for you. Why not join me? If you need medicine in the future, I'll provide it for free." Wang Cheng's maneuver was a direct counter to the tactics Xie Ran had just used against him. Xie Ran's face instantly turned ugly, his fists clenched tightly. Wang Chung was doing this on purpose. He wanted to provoke Xie Ran into taking action against him. Xie Ran clearly harbored resentment. Why should he give the other party so much medicine? By forcing Xie Ran into a rage, he could directly deal with him right there. If Xie Ran attacked first, he could counterattack, and even if the military got involved, they couldn't place all the blame on him. After all, he was only retaliating. Xie Ran was the one who had acted violently. Rather than wait for Xie Ran to take revenge, it was better to resolve this once and for all now. Wang Chung squinted his eyes as he watched Wang Chi get back into the vehicle. He was prepared. If Xie Ran attempted to strike, he would immediately seal off the warship. With the strength of his warship, a mere ordinary awakener would never be able to break through his defenses. However, at that moment, a honking sound came from the side. A military vehicle approached, and a young soldier who had previously spoken with Wang Chung jumped out and said, "Are you the awakener who just made a move? Please come with us. Our battalion commander wants to see you." Upon hearing this, both Wang Chung and Xie Ran were taken aback. Xie Ran had indeed been ready to strike. He had not reached his current standing by playing by the rules and had used all sorts of tough methods. Being pushed to this extent by Wang Chung, he could no longer hold back. But the arrival of the military felt like a bucket of cold water, instantly dousing his anger. The military must have taken a liking to this guy's strength and wanted to invite him. If the military personnel took him away, wouldn't that be digging at the roots of authority? Despite Xie Ran's arrogance, he did not dare to confront the military. Upon hearing that the commander of the military convoy, Commander Zhang, wanted to meet Wang Cheng, his anger diminished significantly. Well then, brother, if that's the case, I'll sell these things to you. You go ahead, Xie Ran conceded. Wang Cheng glanced at him and felt a bit regretful for not being able to eliminate him once and for all at that moment. Xie Ran was quite lucky. However, Wang Cheng could not refuse Commander Zhang's invitation. He immediately got into his vehicle and followed the young soldier's vehicle, heading towards the front of the fleeing convoy, where Zhang Rui's team was located. Behind him, watching Wang Cheng leave, Xie Ran gritted his teeth, a hint of resentment flashing in his eyes. Don't think I'll just accept this loss. Today you were lucky. Even if you join the military, with the current chaos, I'll always have the chance to take you down. Chapter 64. Plenty of benefits. The scale of the fleeing convoy grew larger, but the speed of progress became increasingly slow and cumbersome. Survivors and their vehicles were crammed together, most of them looking disheveled and in dire straits. At this time, those with vehicles were better off than those without. Those without vehicles and injuries were better off than those who were injured and without vehicles. Some were managing to escape relatively smoothly, while others were already in a pitiful state, struggling to keep up with the fleeing crowd. In the face of disaster and turmoil, everyone was on edge, and no one could afford to care for anyone else. Even the military could at most ensure everyone's safety, but could do no more. The military's manpower was also stretched thin. Zhang Rui's team had merged with several others, replenishing soldiers and equipment, but the number of survivors was also increasing. In comparison, their reinforcements felt like a drop in the bucket and could not bring about any substantial change. The entire convoy continued to move forward with great difficulty. On the outskirts of the crowded survivor flow, the military had set up mobile defenses, continuously blocking the mutated beings that surged from both sides. Wang Cheng had yet to notice any of this within the convoy. At that moment, following the military vehicle of the small soldier ahead and leaving the main convoy of survivors, he noticed that there were indeed quite a few mutated creatures surrounding them, howling incessantly and launching continuous assaults on their convoy. Their target was too large to avoid attacks. Moving through the city was like presenting a massive feast to those mutated beings, drawing them in to attack the convoy. If it were an ordinary group of survivors, they would have likely collapsed under such pressure long ago. However, Zhang Rui's troops were armored forces with formidable firepower, capable of holding their ground. Even if those mutated creatures were robust, a barrage of 20mm cannon rounds would leave them in a bloody mess. Relatively speaking, it was still safe. Of course, this scene might be incredibly terrifying for other survivors, but as Wang Cheng watched, he began to entertain other thoughts. With so many monsters around, wasn't this a great opportunity to level up? He squinted his eyes. There was no need to seek out the mutated creatures. They were coming to them in droves. If he hid within the military formation and fired outward, wouldn't that be an easy way to collect energy points? The danger was significantly reduced, while the gains in efficiency were greatly increased. Wang Cheng could roughly guess why Zhang Rui's hens sought him out. He initially intended to refuse, as he hadn't figured out how to cooperate with the military. However, seeing the unfolding scenes along the way, he started to reconsider. They were still advancing when Wang Qi, sitting in the passenger seat next to Wang Cheng, finally spoke up, his expression somewhat awkward. Brother Wang Cheng, you're really something now, aren't you? I can't thank you enough for just now. You saved my life. Otherwise, I might have really died. Wang Qi had wanted to talk to Wang Cheng for a long time. Initially, he couldn't find the words due to the shock of just coming back from the brink of death, but now that he was gradually calming down, his feelings were a mix of complexity and surprise. He had witnessed everything that had just happened. Wang Cheng was incredible. Wang Qi was aware that those people earlier were part of a survivor group of over 30, exchanging medicines and supplies. In such a group, only those with strength would dare to trade with others. Yet just now, Wang Cheng had directly engaged in a strong-arm deal with them, and that Xie Ran had actually endured it, taking down the mutated frogs with ease and treating Xie Ran and the others domineeringly. Such scenes were beyond Wang Qi's imagination. During this time, he had been living in a miserable state, at the bottom of the survivor hierarchy, running away from monsters and avoiding survivors like Xie Ran. He had once thought about being able to shine like other formidable survivors, becoming someone significant in this apocalyptic world. That feeling was not something he had never experienced. At the second supermarket of Haicheng University, he followed closely behind Wang Cheng and experienced something remarkable. At that time, he merely felt happy, not realizing the significance of it all. However, after leaving Haicheng and encountering more people and events, he came to understand just how rare everything had been back then. Not only was the scenery beautiful, but even the supplies were incredibly precious. In fact, if he hadn't taken advantage of Wang Cheng's light to secure those supplies, he might not have made it this far. It was only just now, upon seeing Wang Cheng again, that he felt that thrill once more. Following Wang Cheng, He unleashed his strength against Xie Ran and his group. The most critical part was that the opponents dared not retaliate. They could only suffer in silence. As a mere turn of the head led to them being escorted away by military personnel. Just moments ago, he was at the bottom of the survivor hierarchy. Yet now he found himself in such a position. Wang Qi felt as if he were dreaming, looking at Wang Cheng with a complex expression. He understood that these changes were solely due to his acquaintance with Wang Cheng, who had lent him a helping hand. Nothing more than that. In this apocalyptic world, how could the gap between people be so vast? Wang Cheng glanced at him, likely guessing what Wang Qi was thinking. He simply patted Wang Qi's thigh, handed him a disposable towel, and said, "Wipe yourself off. It's fine, no need to thank me. We know each other. Helping you is no trouble for me. I can't just stand by and watch." Hearing this, Wang Qi nearly shed tears. Only those who have experienced the apocalypse can truly understand the meaning behind the phrase. Not helping you is a duty, helping you is a kindness. Wang Qi choked up a bit, struggling to hold back his emotions, and replied, "I understand. Really, thank you, brother. I won't impose on you this time. Once you're done with your matters, just let me get off. I know I'm not strong, but if there's anything I can assist you with in the future, just let me know, and I'll definitely give it my all." Wang Qing looked at him and said, "I don't know what you've been through recently, but we'll discuss the rest later. For now, just stay in my vehicle." Wang Cheng didn't elaborate further, as his speed gradually decreased, nearing the location of Zhang Ruijian's team. Zhang Ruijian's vehicle was a light infantry fighting vehicle, positioned at the front of the convoy, leading the charge against the mutated creatures. At that moment, he personally emerged and, upon seeing Wang Cheng, was taken aback, exclaiming, "What a coincidence. It's you." He scrutinized Wang Cheng from head to toe without any pleasantries, directly stating, "It seems we are fated to meet. I'll be straightforward. You are an awakened one, right? Your abilities are strong. I'm currently gathering survivors to form a self-defense team to assist with our withdrawal. Are you interested in joining? Rest assured, as long as you join, I guarantee you won't lack supplies and will be provided with weapons and ammunition. As for safety, you don't need to worry too much. We will place you behind our lines. It would be unrealistic to say there won't be any danger, but you won't have to face the mutated creatures directly." Zhang Ruijian's straightforward personality, combined with the tense situation around them, made his words blunt and direct, as he eagerly looked at Wang Cheng, clearly hoping he would join. Now is the time to recruit talent. Someone who can take down a mutated toad in one strike is definitely a skilled individual, precisely the kind of talent they need. Wang Cheng was momentarily taken aback by the words. He initially intended to agree, hoping to take advantage of the situation and gather more energy points. However, he didn't expect that working for Zhang Ruijian would come with so many benefits. The abundance of supplies was one thing, as Wang Cheng was not lacking in that regard. But being provided with weapons and ammunition was something Wang Cheng hadn't anticipated. Under the assurance of safety, wouldn't this be the best way to acquire energy points? Weapons and ammunition. Do I, as an awakened individual, really qualify for that? Of course, Zhang Ruijian replied with a smile. While awakened individuals possess abilities, they still need weapons. But can you use them? Wang Cheng nodded and squinted. Of course I can use them, but when it comes to killing mutated creatures, ammunition runs out quickly. Zhang Ruijian was momentarily stunned, catching the implication in Wang Cheng's words. He couldn't help but chuckle and said generously, "Ammunition runs out quickly? How fast can you use it? If you're saying you're particularly wasteful, I might need to worry about my already limited supplies. But with ammunition, use as much as you want. Just don't waste it. Once it's used up, you can apply for more. The military has plenty of weapons. What they lack is manpower." Hearing this, Wang Cheng nodded directly. "All right, I'm willing to join, but I have one condition. I have a friend." Chapter 65, The Mutated Giant Snake. "Really? You're letting me join too?" Wang Qi looked at Wang Cheng with some surprise. After Wang Cheng and Zhang Ruijian finished their discussion, he asked Wang Qi if he would like to join the military's survivor self-defense team. Wang Cheng laid out all the pros and cons, concluding, "By joining the self-defense team, I might be able to help you, but not much. I have my own things to do, and you'll have to rely on yourself." Wang Qi hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth, and said, "Why not join? I've heard of this survivor self-defense team. Aside from the dangers, the military provides guns and food. If things go well, there's even a chance to transfer into the army later. Some people want to join but can't. Without this opportunity from you, I wouldn't even have a choice, and it's definitely better than my current situation, regardless of how it turns out." This was precisely what Wang Cheng was thinking. But he didn't say it out loud, as it was ultimately someone else's decision and not something he could casually influence. As for this opportunity, perhaps others valued it highly, but to Zhang Ruijian, it was merely a small favor, nothing significant, and their relationship wasn't particularly deep. In fact, Wang Cheng also inquired about Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao from Zhang Ruijian, but unfortunately, Zhang Ruijian didn't know. He didn't even recognize the officer Wang Cheng mentioned. only comforting him that he would surely meet his friends at the temporary gathering point established by the military. Wang Cheng had no choice but to pause his search for now. Although he was worried, he could only temporarily set those thoughts aside. Zhang Ruizhen said he valued Wang Cheng, but in his eyes, Wang Cheng was just a capable awakener. Once everything was arranged, there was nothing more to say, and he wouldn't actively help Wang Cheng find people, which Wang Cheng understood. At this moment, Wang Cheng nodded and said, "All right, I promise, Captain Zhang. So you can follow me for now. Let's report to the designated location together." The same young soldier led the way, guiding Wang Cheng and the others to a certain defensive position on the side of the convoy. Here, there were 2 military vehicles and about 7 or 8 soldiers guarding a defensive line, with gunfire ringing out. By the time Wang Cheng and his group arrived, many other recruited survivors were already there, including several awakeners and ordinary people, all armed. Whether they were awakeners or ordinary individuals, they were shooting and cooperating with the military soldiers to defend this direction. As they advanced, most people were concentrated around a large bus, while those with their own vehicles followed behind. Just as Zhang Ruizhen had promised, these organized survivors not only had weapons and supplies, but their line was positioned behind the military soldiers. If mutated creatures attacked, the first to face them would be the military vehicles and the soldiers in front. Only if they were breached would the organized survivors be in danger. Wang Qi and Wang Cheng were also issued weapons. Wang Qi then left Wang Cheng's vehicle and went to the central bus where most people were gathered. Since Wang Cheng had his own vehicle, he drove alone, following behind and also firing his weapon. Watching Wang Cheng clutching his gun and boarding the crowded bus ahead, Wang Cheng felt an indescribable emotion. Since their last parting, Wang Qi had clearly undergone significant changes. Previously, he had exhibited the mindset of a university student, with his thoughts written all over his face, openly expressing himself and even calling Wang Cheng big shot. But this time, he spoke much less and didn't he dare to ask Wang Cheng for help directly. Without Wang Cheng saying anything, he took the initiative to get off Wang Cheng's vehicle. Wang Cheng understood Wang Qi's intentions. He was grateful for Wang Cheng's rescue, but he recognized the gap between them and didn't want to depend on Wang Cheng, even distancing himself from their previous bond. He had once been a student, but now he had rapidly matured. Seeing Wang Qi, Wang Cheng saw a reflection of himself. He, too, was an ordinary university student. If he hadn't had the system or the chance to be reborn, he might have lived just as ordinary a life as Wang Qi. Perhaps the best he could have achieved would be to become someone like Wang Qi. Thinking of this, Wang Cheng sighed. It wasn't that he didn't want to bring Wang Qi along, but he had too many secrets. Trust was fragile. Having Wang Qi in his vehicle might lead to more trouble. If Wang Qi developed any ill intentions or spoke out of turn, they could easily become mortal enemies. That was something neither of them wanted to see. Perhaps Wang Qi was already aware of this. However, with Wang Cheng at the back of the convoy, he could still keep an eye on Wang Qi even if he was in another vehicle. Wang Cheng was still willing to help when he could. The convoy was moving slowly forward. Wang Cheng received a rifle from a soldier and, after a brief training session, was ready to join the battle. Although the recruitment of Wang Cheng was taken seriously by the group, the ongoing conflicts made the situation dire everywhere. On the battlefield, an individual was just an inconspicuous presence. Who could pay attention to whom? Upon arriving here, Wang Cheng found himself in a nearly unmanaged state. Even the firearm he received was handed over with minimal oversight. The soldier who gave him the rifle only confirmed that Wang Cheng was not an absolute novice before leaving. Everyone had their own roles. The military was short on personnel, but had enough weapons and ammunition at this stage. Wang Cheng took a glance at the convoy behind him, hoping to spot Xia Ran's figure to avoid any potential retaliation. However, the long convoy and his current position made it impossible to see where Xia Ran was. Holding the rifle tightly, Wang Cheng blended into the group, driving slowly while following the main force's retreat. He extended the gun out of the window, multitasking as he aimed and fired. Firing while moving at a low speed was not difficult for him. As he left Pingsong Shopping Mall and Haicheng University behind, his energy points began to rise rapidly. Amidst such a large group, Wang Cheng did not need to hunt mutated creatures on his own. With the military serving as the first line of defense ahead, he saved a lot of time and energy by waiting for the mutants to come to him, resulting in high efficiency in hunting. Other survivors were eager for the convoy to move faster to shake off the surrounding monsters, but for Wang Cheng, the slow pace was actually a good thing, giving him ample time to hunt the mutants. His gun blended in with those of the many survivors and soldiers, making it inconspicuous. When he ran out of ammunition, he quickly requested more, and he had hardly used his own supplies. The survivors in the vehicles ahead were tense and nervous as they fought off the mutated creatures, while Wang Cheng was exhilarated, feeling like he was leveling up in a game. His energy points were rapidly climbing. 130 energy points, 150 energy points, 170 energy points. This efficiency was something Wang Cheng had never imagined before. far exceeding what he had experienced when collaborating with Su Xinghai and Zhang Chao. He felt as if he were in a game, constantly leveling up. There were so many mutants around that he couldn't finish them all, and his only concern was that he might tire out from shooting. But Wang Cheng believed that if he continued like this, it wouldn't be long before his total energy points would exceed 300. While Wang Cheng was busy hunting mutants, inside the bus ahead, Wang Qi was gradually becoming more familiar with the situation, occasionally glancing gratefully towards Wang Cheng. After getting onto the bus, he met a few people and realized that most of them were survivors who had experience with firearms, even some veterans, which was why they were grouped here. The military would not employ true, ordinary people who had no skills, as they couldn't afford to support a group of liabilities. Wang Qi was able to join this group of people thanks to his connections with Wang Cheng, and he felt grateful in his heart. He knew he could not reach Wang Cheng's level, but the current situation was already much better than before. At least with the military present, he would have food, and if he had weapons in hand, he wouldn't have to wait for death and despair when faced with monsters next time. However, the overall situation of the convoy was not optimistic. As more and more survivors gathered, the capabilities of Zhang Ruijian's unit were nearing their limits. Their forces could no longer accommodate so many survivors, and their speed of advance was slowing down. Meanwhile, the number of mutated creatures around them was increasing. At this moment, they felt like a giant ship moving through a quagmire. The more they advanced, the deeper they sank. If this continued, their situation could become worse than when they were in the office building, completely surrounded and overwhelmed by mutated creatures. At the very front of the convoy, Zhang Ruijian's expression was grim as he stared at the electronic map before him. His deputy quietly said, "Our speed is decreasing. At this rate, we won't be able to rendezvous with Old Li's camp. We will be completely immobilized, and our calls for help will go unanswered. There is fighting everywhere, and we are not the only unit in need of assistance. Waiting for rescue is not an option." Zhang Ruijian's face darkened. He knew that at this moment, there was probably only one way to change their situation. However, before he could say anything, a sudden loud noise came from ahead, scattering the crowd of mutated creatures. A massive mutated python, over 10 meters long, roared as it charged out from the dark sky. Chapter 66. This is what you brought upon yourself. The sky over Haicheng was dark. It was already past 3 in the morning, with thick clouds covering the sky, casting a crimson hue. And the air was filled with the sounds of gunfire and smoke. When the mutated giant python appeared, Wang Cheng was also looking at the map. He had just seen Haicheng Park, which meant that although their progress was slow, after spending so much time, they had finally covered more than half the distance across Haicheng. If the young soldier Li Xinqing hadn't lied to Wang Cheng, they were now not far from the temporary gathering point established by the military for survivors. At most 7 or 8 kilometers away. While this distance wouldn't have meant much before the apocalypse, now it was a matter of life and death. Gunfire echoed everywhere, and they were not the only unit engaging in combat with the mutated creatures. The dense gunfire created a cacophony, and with a large gathering of living people. A significant number of mutated creatures were congregating in this area, far exceeding the density of the mutated beings around Haicheng University and the Pingsong Market where Wang Cheng had previously operated. Just as Wang Cheng optimistically estimated their approach to the gathering point to meet with Su Xinghai and others, he suddenly heard a sound from the front of the convoy that resembled a tsunami, followed by a huge explosion. It seemed the military had deployed some heavy weaponry. And then the entire convoy came to a halt, immediately followed by a sudden and overwhelming collapse. Wang Cheng and his group were positioned in the middle of the convoy, unaware of what had happened ahead. They only saw the lengthy line of vehicles suddenly disintegrate, with countless survivors and military personnel scattering in all directions. The military was breaking apart, retreating with survivors towards several directions. The massive group seemed to be splitting into smaller factions. Wang Cheng was in the midst of fighting the mutated beings, confused about the situation, and followed the 2 military vehicles ahead, blending in with a crowd of survivors as they fled in another direction. The number of mutated beings around them was overwhelming. When the military's formation was stable, they could easily withstand the relentless attacks. However, now that the large group was starting to collapse, the mutated beings surged forward, beginning to wreak havoc. The military's firepower, once a continuous line, had turned into isolated points, leaving them in dire straits. In front of Wang Cheng, a soldier in a military vehicle was furiously firing a mounted machine gun at the ground, but there were too many mutated beings surrounding them. They jammed the vehicle's wheels, swarming like a tide, climbing up the sides and overwhelming the vehicle despite the fierce gunfire. With several agonizing screams, the soldiers inside were killed on the spot and torn apart by the mutated beings. However, their situation was relatively better, even without the military. The vehicles they were in were filled with armed survivors from self-defense groups. The bus in front charged forward, firing wildly, using its heavy weight to carve a bloody path through the chaos of mutated beings. Wang Qing took advantage of this. barely exerting himself as he followed closely behind and escaped through the path. On the bus ahead, Wang Qi saw Wang Cheng catching up and was excited. But soon their vehicle collapsed on one side. A massive mutated Samoyed, as strong as a wild bull, charged out, crashing through the glass window of a dilapidated flower shop and flipping their entire bus over. Debris flew everywhere, and several people were killed instantly as the half of the mutated Samoyed's body lodged itself into the bus, its limbs flailing and howling madly. The people inside panicked and fled. Wang Qi stumbled out, bleeding from his forehead, and saw a black sedan cutting through the smoke and dust, stopping right in front of him. It was Wang Cheng's vehicle. He opened the door and looked at the disheveled Wang Qi, saying, "Looks like our fate isn't over yet." Wang Qi's expression was very complicated. Just then, a burst of gunfire erupted nearby, kicking up a cloud of dust around Wang Cheng's vehicle. Wang Qi quickly got in, and as Wang Cheng turned his head, he saw two familiar buses chasing up from behind, with several gun barrels poking out, not targeting the surrounding mutated beings, but instead firing frantically at Wang Cheng. On one of the buses, Li Fang's shouted with a twisted expression, "Aren't you tough? Aren't you powerful? The military has collapsed. I want you dead. Ha ha, I'm going to kill you." Xia Ren also leaned out from the other side, ominously shouting, "You brought this upon yourself. Damn it. It's Xia Ren and the others coming to take revenge on us." Countless monsters around are roaring wildly, and the two buses, armed with modified steel spikes and plates, charge forward like two raging beasts, crushing and colliding with the mutated creatures as they rush toward the royal city. Xia Ren couldn't swallow this anger. In the chaotic escape, he caught sight of the royal city and immediately felt a surge of hatred. He chased after it in the confusion, seeking vengeance. Previously, he didn't dare to act within the convoy, but now it was different. Even if the royal city had extraordinary abilities on such streets, both sides were moving at high speed. As long as they reacted quickly, they could definitely evade. An awakened person's actions were too slow compared to gunfire, and they could definitely dodge. With a dozen guns among their two vehicles, they believed they could turn the royal city into a sieve. Bullets rained down, hitting the body of the royal city's vehicle, creating a sound like exploding beans. Wang Qi was so scared that he shivered, curled up, and shouted, "Be careful, royal city." However, he soon heard the calm voice of the royal city, "Hold on tight." Then, Wang Qi was astonished to find that their vehicle, despite being shot at, showed no signs of being penetrated. Was this vehicle bulletproof? At that moment, the royal city abruptly turned around, crashing into a writhing mutant behind them, accelerating sideways like a black lightning bolt, recklessly colliding with one of the buses. They didn't expect that in such a situation, the royal city wouldn't flee in panic, but would dare to turn around and crash. The driver of the other vehicle frantically turned the steering wheel, but it was too late. The royal city's vehicle slammed into the enemy's vehicle like a cannonball, causing Wang Qi to shut his eyes in fear, while Xia Ran and Li Fang's on the other bus widened their eyes in shock. Is he trying to kill himself by crashing into us? Even if his vehicle is bulletproof, our vehicle is reinforced with steel spikes. Li Fangshan's words were abruptly cut off because the royal city really made the impact. The anticipated scene of mutual destruction didn't occur. Instead, under the sudden collision, it was the bus that was hit that twisted and deformed. The steel spikes and the fragile metal body collapsed entirely, rolling over and crashing into a storefront, igniting a massive fire. Many inside, who had just been shouting to open fire at the royal city, were instantly killed in the collision. As for the royal city's vehicle, it showed no signs of deformation at all. Amidst the flames, it made a sharp turn and charged toward the bus carrying Xia Ran and Li Fang's. Both Li Fang's and Xia Ran were dumbfounded. What the hell is this vehicle? How could it possibly be unharmed after such a collision? It's almost like an armored vehicle. Xia Ran shouted, "Get out of the way." However, this time, although the royal city was charging toward them, it wasn't a collision. Instead, it directly extended a mounted rifle, opening fire wildly. The bullets swept through, instantly killing the driver and blowing out the tires of their bus. Their vehicle lost control, crashing into a nearby building, violently shaking, and instantly killing countless people inside. Wang Cheng did not stop, continuing to accelerate, using a machine gun to wipe out the mutated Samoyed that had just poked its head out, leaving a cloud of dust behind. Behind him, Xia Ran struggled to crawl out of the vehicle, unsteadily standing on the roof, watching Wang Cheng disappear into the distance, extending a hand in a halting gesture, almost spitting blood in anger. Li Fang's had already been killed in the crash, and Xia Ran, filled with grief and indignation, shouted madly at Wang Cheng's departing figure, "If you don't kill me, I will definitely kill you." However, he suddenly sensed something was off. Looking down, he realized that around the bus he had crashed, a dense swarm of mutated creatures had already gathered, like a tidal wave, engulfing the vehicle. Countless monsters were climbing up the sides. He stood on the roof like a solitary island, with no way to escape. At that moment, Sierran finally understood that Wang Chung wasn't sparing him. He knew Sierran was doomed and couldn't be bothered to kill him, leaving him there to be slaughtered by the mutated beings. A look of regretful despair finally appeared on Sierran's face. He had thought of ways to avoid the other party's fire abilities, but he hadn't realized that the opponent hadn't even used any powers. Just one vehicle had taken down their 2 modified buses and over 30 people. Did I really make a mistake? The black tide surged. The dense mass of mutated creatures rushed from behind, slowly engulfing him and the entire vehicle. Wang Chung had already gone far away. Dear readers, Happy New Year. In this new year, I hope for your continued support. Chapter 67.